back to Loss of Lieutenant. My name is Jacob, and I am joined with my beautiful hosts, Jordan.
Hello there.
Nick.
Hello.
And Tristan.
Lucky last.
Yes. Least but not forgotten. That's an awful thing to say.
What?
My bad.
Immediately flubbed it.
What the?
We let him do the intro once. Immediately
Yeah,
flubbed
I'm out
it.
of practice, guys. I'm out of practice. But this episode today, we are talking about lieutenants. Something that maybe, especially if you new to Infinity, something of an afterthought, but has a lot more complexity than I think a lot of people give the time to actually think about.
I found that like new players either think about lieutenants way too much or not in the slightest.
I think that's
there is
exactly,
no in between.
Yeah, exactly on the ball with that.
Exactly. I think that's actually spot on. You're either terrified of the fact that they exist, right, or you're like, oh yeah, whatever. But before we get into that, we have a couple of events to go through.
Yeah. So upcoming events. These slides are looking a little bit smaller now because you probably noticed we had a couple of weeks off there for Easter, and then Tristan was the leading TO at ARC, so he had no time on his hands. Tristan, how many cans of Monster was had?
Only two.
I don't know if I believe that, frankly.
It's fairly reasonable.
It helped that they had an on-site barista, so...
Jesus Christ.
I think if I was in Tristan's position, I'd just have an IV plugged in.
Yeah.
We do still have some upcoming events, though. First up is BrizCon 2025 from the 17th to the 18th of May at the Mount Gravett Showgrounds in Queensland, with the missions of Mindwipe, Biotech 4, Unmasking, Countermeasures, Decapitation, leading the charge this year, apparently, of satellite events and their refusal to let go of Biotech 4 as a fucking mission.
Don't know if you guys have ever been to BrizCon. It's a good small event. I'd imagine it's grown by now.
Nah.
But yeah.
It's sold out.
Well,
it's sold out at 18 or 16?
I think so, yeah. I still get comments from listeners who are like, oh yeah, Loss of Lieutenant with the Spanish guy, right, who played Vanilla Pano with Jean Mendoza. That is still a comment that I get to this day. And then after which we have Border Bash 2025 from the 7th to the 8th of June, which is the King's Birthday long weekend at the Mirabina Community Centre in Lavington, with the missions being Cryogenics, Mindwipe, Countermeasures, Panic Room, and the Armory, because Day 2 is not a day for having fun.
No.
Day 2 is the day for weird-ass lists.
Yeah, Day 2 is the day where no one is going to have a lot of fun. But boy howdy, he's going to create some interesting circumstance. But that isn't all. We're again going international, as the TO for this event emailed us about 30 minutes before we were going to be set
about
to record
3 hours before we went live.
Yeah, 3 hours before we went live. Good timing on that one, which is Hellfinity Nordic Masters from the 28th to the 29th of June, held at the historic Oxelen Helsingborg, South Sweden.
It's Helsingborg. It's where the vampire hunter came from.
I think Oxholland might be like a church or something.
I don't know.
A castle. Fuck do I know.
You're asking like convict savages about European shit.
All the Swedes just died inside. And they're like,
all the Swedes just died inside. And we're just like, yeah, the community centre has a walk-in fucking fridge for the grog.
Yeah.
We love it. There's capped at 40 players, I believe, with tickets costing 650 Swedish krona, which is about 55 euros. And there is an on-site bar. Well, I mean, does anyone want to go to Sweden?
Fuck yeah.
The missions for this event being Sunstroke, which is a custom scenario based on Frostbite. I could already infer some things about it based on the name alone. Unmasking, Firefight, Supremacy, and Decapitation. That is a mission lineup that I can get behind because it doesn't have fucking Biotech 4
I think that's a pretty solid lineup.
Good job, Nordic Masters.
Yep.
I'm excited to see Sunstroke in there. That's been submitted to previous Lost Lieutenant custom mission challenges. I really like it. I think it's...
Is that the heat one? Where like heavy infantry overheat or something like that?
So it's basically like, it's based on Frostbite, but instead of stripes, it has quadrants in the middle.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a bit more forgiving as far as like moving up the board and forcing people in the middle, but at the same time, you still, I think, have only 3 consoles and 4 quadrants. So
okay.
someone's losing out.
You know what is cool though? The number of custom missions that are like leaking their way into satellite events this year. Like I've noticed like a number of the events we've been spruiking on here, there has been like a surprising amount of like custom mission representation, which is sick.
Yeah,
Love to see that.
I hope that CB look and see that they can be a lot more creative with their scenarios. But also, I mean, may as well leave some room for the community to just throw in their creative thing. Also, Oxenharlan seems to be like a sweet ass like brewery sort of like old brewery sort of thing, like with a pub. So it looks sweet as hell.
Fuck yeah.
We weren't too far off.
What are the return tickets to Sweden, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we went there after announcing it, I think they'd kill us. They'd just be like, here's a drink. Fuck.
Well, it's only 3 weeks after Border Bash. It's fine.
I'll outdrink the fucking Swedes.
All right.
All right, before we do get started, we have a couple of questions for you, our lovely audience members, based on the topic of the episode tonight. What style of lieutenant do you prefer playing, and who in the game is your favourite lieutenant? If you want to get to us about this, either email us at lostlieutenant@gmail.com or head over to our Discord, the link to which will be working, will be in the description of this video.
Brother, it's been working for 6 months. I don't know where this is coming from.
Because you fucked it up once and it's going to hang around your neck for the rest of your fucking career. You shaved yourself in shame after that.
Yes.
That's my story and I am sticking to it. And if you do wish to get in on these episodes live, ask us questions live, or even tell us live your answers to these questions, be sure to head over to patreon.com/lossoflieutenant, where you can become one of our lovely cocks, a skill we're going to be talking about a lot tonight. And you'll be able to listen to these episodes live.
Yeah, if you didn't know, cock actually does stand for the chain of command. We're not just being mean to our patrons.
And we love our patrons.
We can be both.
We do.
We do. We should quickly go through. Jordan, what's your favourite lieutenant in the game right now?
Ooh, yeah, Jean d'Arc. It's not a hard question.
Yeah, I see that. Yep. Jacob, is it Kusanagi? Please don't say Kusanagi.
Nah, she's too squishy, unfortunately. I'll you know what? I'm always going to be an Azura stan.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
Good choice.
Nick?
Always.
It's got to be the Sogura APHMG right now.
I'm seeing a pattern. So I'll just...
Tristan, we don't even need an answer from you. We know who it is.
It starts with B and ends with Octa.
Yeah, look. And people accuse me of being predictable. Fucking Tristan, just like, have you heard about the Boktar?
I had when I went through the notes, I had to make sure there was a special place for the Boktar.
I don't know if it exactly deserves the place you've given it.
Yes,
as well.
it does.
You look at the profiles listed in that slide, and then it's like, oh, I'm the Boktar. It's like,
No,
I can
don't.
see who
Fuck
edited
off.
this.
Fuck off. It deserves it absolutely. Anyway,
Tristan, what are we talking about tonight?
we are talking about lieutenants. We are talking about how to use them, how to protect them, how to pick them, how to abuse them, and then how to abuse your opponent having them. Because everyone has one. We are going back to basics on lieutenants. So, Nick, what are the basics of a lieutenant?
Sure. So you're required to have one and only one in your list. It has to be on the table as a model or a marker. And it's the model that you use the whip of at the start of the game to make that initiative roll and figure out who is picking sides.
I feel like every new player who plays Infinity has the exact same line of thought where they're like, oh, this model can be a lieutenant and it has hidden deployment. I've cracked the game. I don't think there has been a new player that has not had that exact line of thought happen to them.
I mean, fair's fair. They're not necessarily... Oh, wait, a hidden deployment.
Yeah,
right, as in, like, completely off the table.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah,
every single new player has done this.
That is the nuance of the lieutenant, is that there are some profiles where you essentially are wasting a skill on the lieutenant because hidden or aerial deployment, which are the only two I think they can start off the table, technically means you don't exist.
Nope, I can't think of any aerial deployment
Yeah,
lieutenants
there's
in
probably
the game anymore. But definitely
the
hidden
only-
deployment.
The only one that technically kind of exists was Van Zant when he had the old rule executive order, which meant as soon as he appeared, he became a
Okay.
lieutenant.
All right,
2
everyone, take a
editions or
drink.
more
He's-
ago.
Hold on.
Yeah, I was about to say, take a drink. Jacob has
I'm
mentioned
talking about
N3.
N3.
Isn't
My favorite version of
isn't the Akali
Affinity.
dude an LT and he's a drop troop?
Who?
The character Akali? What's his name?
What faction?
I think he's gone. He's
Kirpal
gone.
Singh or whatever?
Yeah, he's gone.
He's not in the
He doesn't
game?
exist
Yeah,
anymore.
Oh, okay.
No, he doesn't exist anymore. I think so.
Anyway. Yes,
Yeah, he's gone.
the whip roll is important, is what we were saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say it actually is probably the most important single roll in the game.
Yes.
Interesting. I never even thought about it. Is that technically the lieutenant's the first model you use in the game?
I think the importance of the whip roll is fluctuated in importance over N4. In N5 right now, it does very much feel like it's the most important role in the game with how good going first has been.
Yep.
Yeah, but admittedly, it's if anyone is really new, the lieutenant roll's a normal roll you do against your opponent. Sorry, face-to-face roll, not a normal roll.
Yes. Yeah.
But I find that trying to focus on having a really high whip lieutenant for that role is often just doesn't come into play. Like you'll roll a 7, and any of your lieutenants would have been fine with that.
Well, the differences that a point of whip makes on that roll are fairly minor. So spending extra to get a lieutenant that has a higher whip, if you don't want the rest of the package, is usually a waste of points. But the effect of that extra point or 2 of whip does make itself known after you play a few games.
I think in a tournament setting, part of the perceived success of armies like Combined Army is that nearly every lieutenant is whip 15 plus that you're realistically taking.
Yeah.
So there's whip 15,
and
whip 16, and whip 17. And over 5 games, that kind of averages out to you getting that choice in your favor more often than not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I find it's less rolling over your opponent and more reducing the chance of your just outright failing the lieutenant roll.
Yeah, very infrequently do I actually lose the roll to my opponent. It's just that I roll a 17 and it's well, fucked.
Yeah. As long as you don't fail, you win.
Yep. 100%.
I mean, you can't. The thing with the lieutenant role is you can never, regardless of your lieutenant, plan on winning it.
No.
There's no skill in the game that makes you better at that role. There's nothing you can do. You just roll the dice. So you always have to plan that you'll essentially fail the lieutenant role and get the worst possible decision out of it, and then you have to plan for how you're going to work for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like any average roll. You have to accept the risk that comes with it, and it just so happens that risk is fairly substantial.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Nick.
For having a lieutenant, each turn when you generate your orders, the lieutenant generates a special lieutenant order. This is outside of the usual combat groups, and it can only be used by the lieutenant or a model with the NCO order or NCO skill.
Yep.
There are ways to modify that with the Strategos skill, but we'll get to that more when we talk about lieutenants with Strategos.
Hey, Jordan.
Yes.
What happens when you don't have a lieutenant?
You go into everyone's favorite condition, which is loss of lieutenant.
Hey, roll credits.
Lieutenants are unfortunately a required vulnerability in list building. They are always going to be a weak spot of your list, and you do things to mitigate the chance of going into loss of lieutenant. The way this happens is in the tactical phase, if any of these are applicable, your lieutenant is in a null state, which means which means dead or unconscious. They're in an isolated state, or they are not on the board as a model or a marker, which is the downfall of many a young Pano player who has said, but what if I have my Carter lieutenant in hidden deployment? Tristan gets it.
You better fucking hope that you have a chance to dodge.
Exactly. So what does happen in Loss of Lieutenant? All of your troopers become irregular. It supersedes the Fireteam Master ability. However, troopers with Warhorse remain regular, which means there is a single faction in the game for whom Loss of Lieutenant need not apply. Hello, Morats.
It depends on how many remotes you're running.
Jesus Christ. And then at the end of the turn, in secret, you select a new lieutenant. That lieutenant cannot be a remote. So the way the Loss of Lieutenant
Or
is
irregular.
designed, or irregular, sorry. The way Loss of Lieutenant is designed is to essentially make you, like, lose one turn of play. You have lost your lieutenant, and as a consequence of that, you are essentially losing a turn of the game because everything is irregular and you can't string together a series of activations on one unit outside of potentially whatever war horses you have, along with if you decide to use all of your command tokens.
Yeah.
So it's just a designed punishment.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
it greatly decreases your ability to act in a coordinated manner during that turn. Like I said, you can convert using command tokens, but overall, most models you're just going to be able to do one thing as opposed to pouring orders from certain models into other models.
Yeah, it's
Also, if you're
supposed
playing...
to. I was just saying, it's supposed to represent re-establishing the chain of command.
Yeah. And if you're playing a sectorial as well, it's designed to punish you more than a vanilla faction, but a little bit less now in N5, because it means if you try and activate any of your fire teams, you have to use one of those command tokens, otherwise that fire team does just immediately break.
One thing to really point out for new players and maybe some old players returning is that a lot of people used to play that when you entered Lost Lieutenant, you immediately picked your new lieutenant right then and there. Nope, you can go around, stuff can die accidentally in your active turn, and then at the end, you pick your lieutenant. So you don't accidentally pick a lieutenant, get it killed, and then think you've screwed yourself.
Yeah.
Cool. Primary threats to lieutenants. We've all faced these one time or another. So impersonators and over-infiltrators. We have things like Shinobu, Fides, and Speculo killers. I think these, out of all of them, are potentially the most reliable for killing lieutenants.
Yeah, I think from every version of Infinity, right, any N number, right, these guys, especially the impersonators, because they can get right up in your face, right, have always been a problem for factions with, or army lists with obvious lieutenants.
Yeah. I would maybe give my money to the Raziat Spitfire.
Yep.
I feel like that
He's
has
coming up.
collected the most lieutenant scalps for me.
Yep, fair
One
enough.
line down.
All right, next up we have combat jump and parachutists, which in N5 are cheaper and more plentiful. Significantly cheaper, by the way.
And come with super jump jet propulsion a lot of the time as well.
Yes.
So they're more maneuverable once they hit.
I think that definitely... Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Parachutist deployment zone is also more plentiful or more available in N5 now.
A little
it's
bit,
not greatly available, but more factions do have it now.
Yeah. I think that the changes to how parachutists sort of are working in N5 is sort of maybe why I do like them as Lieutenant Hunters a little bit more than the over-infiltrators. Because a lot of those don't come with mobility skills attached. So if you are playing against the JSA or a Hack Islam, you can pretty safely put a dude on a rooftop and be like, okay, they really need to commit if they're going to try and get to him. Whereas now with parachutists, a lot of the time they can do a sick cartwheel up in the air and get that line of fire, which they otherwise wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever thought about how powerful the like combo jump parachutists are when you give them super jump jet propulsion. That's actually huge.
Which is 90% of them. Yeah.
No, it is most of them.
Yeah, because deploying properly on stairs with 3 models will shut down a Fide.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, it's the same as like the way you used to counter a specular or a Fide in deployment was you deployed your Libertos on top of it.
Yes.
Yeah. There's plenty of ways of being like, that's a Fide, I'm gonna block him.
What happened? We put baby in the corner.
That is a very common mistake with Fide players as well. They have the instinct of the Fide needs to be touching cover. And you go, if it wasn't touching cover, you could probably slip out from this Liberto. But the fact that it is, sorry, he's stuck there.
Yep.
Next, the most prevalent probably for the IGL, and they...
IGL players, look away. Look away. It's okay.
It'll be the guided missiles. N5 has introduced buffs to pitches or linked pitches and spotlights. So linked pitches, long-range linked pitches are a lot more reliable, and active turn spotlight is a lot more reliable against anything BTS 6 and below. The missile itself, or without a firewall. The missile itself is less deadly, but that's kind of offset by the fact that
the moderator screaming on the rooftop does not care if that missile has AP or doesn't have AP. It's getting fucking splattered regardless.
No, most lieutenants that you're going to be guided missiling don't have armor high enough to worry about the AP. Denying them cover is the bulk of their armor.
Yep.
Just getting to them that easily and smacking them with a missile.
Yep. And I think out of all of these potential strategies, guided is probably the most unanimous across the factions. There's probably the most amount of like pitches and guided and spotlight versus impersonators or really good drop troops.
Yeah. I mean,
I think almost everyone has access to guided missiles, though not necessarily through pitchers.
Linked pitches definitely aren't like unanimous among factions, which is a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But you could have infiltrating models with deployable repeaters, or a flashbot who you spend 3 orders on and move from 36 inches across the board.
Fast pandas, mad traps. Mad traps?
Nope.
No.
Mad traps aren't repeaters.
Just fast pandas.
Just fast
Pano
pandas.
has fast pandas now, so, you know, like, it's a thing.
They've had fast pandas for ages.
Well, on a 12-point Fusilier or 13-point Fusilier.
They've had them for ages. They had them in N4 on the regular hacker.
Oh, sure. Did they?
Yes.
Was it a fast panda?
Yes.
You sure?
You want to make a bet?
No? Just making sure that you're sure.
You're right, you keep looking. I will go to human sphere right now.
Yeah, sure. Anyway. Next up, we have the classic bane of early N5. It's going to be the aggressive close combat units. Liang Kai, Norkius, Musashi, just those guys that are super fast, run across the table. They had the Vita Pack in hand for when they got slapped, and just plowed through your DZ, aiming straight for the face of your lieutenant.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that's not a thing anymore. But, well, the Vita Pack shenanigans are not a thing anymore.
True,
but close combat units are definitely
I never even
a
thought
threat.
of that. I never even thought of that. The idea that you could give a Vita Pack to a dude, like you suicide him, and he's like, "No, I'm all right."
Oh, well, I'm sorry to say that it is too late to enjoy that.
The Ankai and Norkius in particular were like the most dangerous version of that. Norkius because of the combination of having had a marker state along with Protheon, where he like grows as he walks through a DZ, and Liang Kai being as hypermobile as he was.
Yeah,
and with 3 effective wounds.
And with the insane like super jump that used to exist.
Yep,
that's all right. I'm more than happy to have not taken advantage of that and the Azura's MSV3 hacking.
Sad that's gone.
Not really.
All right, Jacob, how do we avoid loss of lieutenant?
Well, best way is to just keep your lieutenant alive. But how do we achieve that? So we either hide our lieutenant, marker states, decoys in terms of the skill decoy, or decoys in the terms of most smaller lieutenants, like light infantry lieutenants, have like an identical profile that you can use as a decoy. Insert moderator with combi rifle.
Yeah, pretty much every faction in the game has some variation of cheap line troop LT plus decoy LT.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so a basic Fusilier, a basic Zanshi, a basic almost everything. There's a few factions that
I
don't
think
technically have a line infantry, but you deal
with
with that.
N5 they've expanded that some, and most lieutenants that aren't characters and are more than AVA1 will have an identical profile.
Yeah.
Even up to like the heavy infantry, CB did a pretty good job of cleaning that up in N5 to make sure everyone had a decoy.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of thinking like OCF doesn't have like that line. I mean, they kind of do, they kind of don't. Whatever.
Nexus.
Yeah.
There are a couple of factions that don't have that typical line infantry LT. Yes, they are
Yes.
few and far between.
It's hard to have the decoy.
Yep.
But they don't have like the marker states or the actual decoy skill. Or you put it right. The other way is you put them in hard to reach locations. I know in Australia we have a particular piece of terrain that sometimes is ruled as a building that cannot be speculatively fired into. But things just like but things like on a building that's hard to get on top of, like in the corner, looking at the like any area that like a deployable that a parachutist might drop into, places like that they can either A, defend themselves okay, and B, you have to have jumping, like super jump, climbing plus to get there at any sort of speed. Right, that's really the only way.
Make them burn orders to get to your lieutenant.
Yep.
Yeah, because remember that if they do manage to get to the lieutenant after burning all the orders, they lost their first turn, you lost your first turn, you're back to equal. And in fact, I'd almost argue that you're up ahead because you can do stuff.
You have the potential.
That's a really good point. If you can make them burn enough orders, lost lieutenant is the lesser of... you'd rather have them lose 10 orders to kill your lieutenant and not do anything else.
Which
is why we... Sorry,
go on.
Oh, it's just that's why that like decoy having two of the same profile is worthwhile, because the chance that you spend your entire turn and guess wrong is not worth it for the most people. Yeah.
The other interesting thing that I don't think a lot of people think about is if they force you into loss turn 1, they now have most of the time very little idea who your new LT is. So potentially they could have saved that till turn 2 or to a time where it was more impactful to put you in loss. But if they put you in loss in your first turn and they spend a massive amount of resources to do it and you recover fairly well, they now go, I have no idea who your LT is, so I may as well not even try.
Yeah, I think a really good mindset for players, especially newer players, to get into when it comes to lieutenants is to not necessarily be concerned about trying to make it so your LT can't die, but it's about making it so your opponent has to invest so much into killing your LT that sure you essentially lose one turn, they also lose one turn investing so much to kill your lieutenant. Like a lot of mistakes that you'll see even experienced players make will be overcommitting to kill a lieutenant, not realizing that essentially all they have done that turn is kill the lieutenant and nothing else.
Yeah, and that comes into this, like, the use of layered defenses. So realistically, every time you're going second, you have to accept that you're going to lose some form of models against, an alpha strike, no matter what. So
there's a reason why the ability to take 2 orders off your opponent who's going first exists. Because you should accept that when you're going second, you're probably going to be down about 2 orders.
1 or 2 models, yep. So you got to prepare a crumple zone for your opponent, be conscious about what models and where the interactions are going to happen on the table. So kind of go, if this runs up here, he's going to hit this corner, he's going to see the mine first, this guy's going to be within 8 when they see each other. That kind of thing. So throw your templates, your specialists, your CC specialists, your corner guards, your jammers, those kinds of things. Make sure that your opponent's hitting those first, aside from maybe, you do have to consider like the deployment zone drop troops as well.
Yep.
Depending on if you're versing a faction that has them. That kind of comes with experience.
Just know that like when you ask for the faction, if they say CA, Corregidor,
or you ask
Cosmoflot.
them, does your faction have access to deployment zone parachutist, which is
Yes.
open information?
Yes, sir.
That's true.
Yeah, and then, like, again, if you're playing against CA, you do essentially need to always be aware of mnemonica. Something for CA players as well to sort of, like, get around is that, sure, like, every mnemonica lieutenant is vulnerable to being isolated. That is a way to put you in loss of lieutenant. If your opponent focuses on isolating your lieutenant instead of killing it to avoid mnemonica happening, you still have your 70-point lieutenant.
Yep.
And
Yes,
you're
sir.
playing a faction that makes a great, that usually plays almost 5 warhorses easily in almost any given list.
And even if you kill their only engineer/doctor, Speedball is, 1 or 2 orders away from making that lieutenant perfectly healthy again.
Mnemonica's back on the table.
Even outside of Speedball as well, like a Whip 16 Lieutenant is like resetting on 7s. It's not a bad.
Yeah.
It's not like it's definitely not the worst reset of your life.
Yep.
We also got using Beefcake Lieutenants. Now, I don't think there's a huge number of lieutenants that are beefcakes but not alphas. The one that comes to mind is the Demonist from Bakunin, who is kind of useless, does have the decoy skill, but is heavy infantry, so it is quite beefy.
Yeah,
the aspects definitely fall into this category. Like, you're not going to alpha strike with a Caronted, you're not going to alpha strike with like an Anathematic. They're going to sit in your DZ and do their job, basically. It's the same with an Asura as well. Like, it's not going to run into your opponent's DZ.
Yeah. The difference with them is you might put them in danger. You might actually use them.
Compared
to the...
If you similar to making your lieutenant hard to reach, if they're just naturally hard to kill because they've got 3 effective wounds and armor of 6 or more, that just innately requires several orders of commitment before they have a chance to go down.
Yeah. It's a psychological deterrent as well.
Yes.
If they sit there and go, there's 3 wounds of LT here, I'm not even going to think about it. Like, that's where my thought process stops and I decide to do something else.
Yeah, 3 wounds, 5 armor. Why bother?
Yeah. Oh, like in my supremacy game at Arc against Val, on bottom of 1, I ran my lieutenant into one of his zones and left it there the entire game because he couldn't figure out how to put enough work in it to actually down it. And it secured the zone next to his deployment zone all 3 rounds.
Yeah, fair enough. There's also taking advantage of the reserve drop when you're doing your deployment, where you can hold your lieutenant back. Again, probably good for a lieutenant that doesn't have the decoy, doesn't have the marker state, right? Maybe your list doesn't necessarily have the biggest amount of layered defenses, where you could take a look at if you're going second, or even if you're going first, take a look at potentially where your opponent has put the bulk of their forces and either plan to be away from it or away from pitches. I think this particular this particular point is really important if you have a hacking lieutenant, where if your opponent has a bunch of pitches, a bunch of killer hackers, you go, nah, I'm not going to be in front of those guys and let them pitch on me real easily. I'm going to be literally across the table from these guys. If they want to get that pitcher down, it's going to be 3 orders to get into position, 1 order to get the pitcher down, another order to get that killer hacker out, and maybe that'll be worth it.
Reserve dropping your lieutenant is also one of the best defenses against an impersonator or over-infiltrator.
Yep.
Yeah. This is also good for any of them that have like Strategos, that's also like your fighty lieutenant. The Marut comes to mind, where you're like, I want to put my hard-hitting lieutenant in the right spot.
Yep. Going second means you're always seeing everything your opponents put down, aside from hidden deployment and things of that nature, before you put your LT down. So you have most of the information always. And yeah, as you mentioned, against pitches, it's one of the best defenses against pitches.
Yeah, so like again in my game against Fallon, I was playing Bakunin in my game at Arc. He kept his potentially his lieutenant back, which would have been his
Interventor.
Interventor.
like interventor. Which means that he goes, I'm just gonna put it away from your pitches because I don't want to get those anywhere near me.
Yep.
So ultimately, eventually your lieutenant might be in proper danger, your opponent gets lucky, maybe you just do a bad deployment, whatever. So sometimes it's worth having a backup plan. The easiest and simplest backup plan is the skill Chain of Command. It simply means that as soon as your lieutenant dies, on the next turn, that person...
It's not as soon as your LT dies, it's as soon as you do the loss of lieutenant check, your Chain of Command will become your lieutenant.
Yes. So they get the lieutenant skill, they generate the order, you don't enter in loss of lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a better version of Chain of Command, because it's attached to your lieutenant, is Mnemonica. So this is exclusive to CA, where if your lieutenant dies, they are able to transfer their lieutenant's lieutenant skills, so the ability to generate that order, as well as is it still the whip?
Yes.
The whip and the lieutenant
whip.
special skills.
Yeah. Yep. To any model with a cube.
Without
or a remote, I believe.
Is it with a cube or without a cube?
I believe it's with a cube.
It's with a cube.
It's with a cube or a remote. And once they get transferred, the model loses their cube.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, this just completely avoids loss of lieutenant, because technically you never lost your lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Warhorse LT, I think this is really just to avoid being isolated. You cannot isolate a warhorse, therefore you cannot get into loss of lieutenant for being isolated. The other option is to use a lot of warhorse troopers. So some armies, obviously Morant is the penultimate in having a ton of warhorse troopers. There's a couple of others that can do it to lesser effect.
You're
OSS
looking like
Yardus.
vanilla Aleph with net rods, Gus with Securitates, and a couple other veterans.
It is worth
Hannah with bolts.
Your faction and finding where your war horses are scattered, because some factions have them show up in weird places, and it's good to know they're there. And more importantly, good to remember they're there if you're using them.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Do not forget that skill.
Yeah, the difference between having no regular orders and like up potentially 2 to 3 regular orders in a turn of loss of lieutenant is huge. Being able to string together potentially 7 regular order activations is essentially having a full turn.
Yeah.
And then the alternative, learning to play in loss of lieutenant.
It's a good skill.
It is, like any other bad situation in the game. I know in pickup games, a lot of times you'll want to play a nice full game. If you get into a situation, you're like, well, the game's over. Let's just re-rack and not play the next few turns. It's good to learn to play in bad situations. It's good to learn how to play if you got hit by a bad alpha. It's good to learn how to play in Lost Lieutenant, because at a tournament, you don't have the option of just re-racking.
Yeah.
Yeah. In general, it once you're in Lost Lieutenant, it's sort of identify what you're going to try and achieve in your turn. If you've got one guy that you want to pump orders in, make sure that you use his order on himself, convert a bunch of orders. This is where the introduction of Speedball, I think, has really made the use of command tokens a proper difficult choice.
Yes.
Whereas before you might not use up all your command tokens before the end of the game, and only really use them all up if you get into loss of lieutenant. Now it's if I go in second and I speedball and get rid of his orders, I've only got 2 command tokens with which to convert irregular orders if I get into loss of lieutenant.
Yeah,
it's difficult, sucks. Probably not going to get the most amount done in that turn, but like all is not lost.
No.
I've seen plenty of sort of situations occur where someone's been a lost lieutenant and achieved a lot more than I thought that they'd be able to.
Some people have won from Lost Lieutenant fairly convincingly.
Yeah. It is absolutely possible to be a Lost Lieutenant one of your 3 turns and win the game. It is possible to be a Lost Lieutenant 2 of your 3 turns and win the game, but that's a bit more challenging.
Funnily enough, this reminds me kind of Nick's latest play strategy, in that another way to mitigate loss of lieutenant is to have those like drop troops, hidden deploy in the midfield kind of troops that are super efficient because they're already there, or you can put them where you want to put them, and they only need 2 or 3 orders to kind of do the job that you're looking for them to do.
Yeah. I don't know if it's worth like planning for loss of lieutenant, but having experience in it is worth it.
It's worth a thought, I think. I don't think it's worth thinking about more than your actual game plan.
Yeah.
I think the only time that it's really worth planning for Lost Lieutenant is if you lose your lieutenant in your active turn.
Yes.
In which case, you know you will be in Lost Lieutenant next turn and can set up models so that the ones that, say, want to go push a button are within 1 to 2 orders of that button.
Dodges that are not necessarily advantageous.
Your place, but it will make it possible then to do that in Lost Lieutenant.
Yeah, so like dodges that technically wouldn't make sense, except for the fact that you're in Lost of Lieutenant and there's extra 2, 3, 4 inches.
And the other thing is that retreat will send you into loss even if your lieutenant is still alive. Although retreat is much worse than loss of lieutenant most of the time. Retreat normally means you only have 2 or 3 things left on the table anyway.
Yes.
But yes, it's another thing to keep in mind for new players is you can have your lieutenant and 2 dudes, but retreat still means loss of lieutenant. All right. Types of lieutenants. This is, I think, taking a little bit of inspiration from Infinity the Dante's video, which was excellent. We all love Dante. So we'll start with...
Give him credit.
Yeah, I did.
Don't give him credit.
Why? He works hard.
Yeah.
He's a good boy. We have to leech views off of him now, Jordan.
Nah. He's too... Nah.
Give him head pats.
All right. Nick, what's the first one? What's the most common one?
Okay, so the very first lieutenant we're going to talk about is the requirement. It meets the minimum
your
requirements.
list is legal.
Yes, it meets the minimum requirements. So you have a legal list. These are usually going to be the absolute cheapest lieutenants you can get. Usually they're going to be line infantry, possibly with some minor defensive upgrades. So sometimes you'll get them where it's a bare bones profile, but it's got a camo marker, so it has that slight bit of defense. The main benefit of these is that they are cheap, and that means you have more points to spend elsewhere.
Yeah.
Usually you'll find these, especially if it's a sectoral, sitting in a fire team, sitting in an ARO fire team, adding to the fire team's level. Or, like we talked about earlier, hiding prone somewhere awkward to reach, where it's going to take the opponent more orders than hopefully it's worth to go find them. These also have some of the cheapest body doubles for decoys, because, well, the body doubles are usually the same cost or a point less. So instead of 1 9-point cheap lieutenant, you buy 1 9-point cheap lieutenant and a 9-point body double, so that now your opponent has a 50-50 chance to get the right one. Just don't put them within blast template of each other and remove that chance.
Yeah, so playing Bakunin, they're generally in two equally difficult to reach corners on either side of my deployment zone.
Well, unless you are specifically playing Jacob, in which case there will be like 4 moderators on the table. All of them could potentially be the lieutenant.
Yes.
I haven't done that in a little bit.
Yes, you absolutely have.
I think the last game we played, Jacob against Bakunin, I think he had 3 moderators.
Yeah, you had so many moderators.
Which is, that's fine.
Oh well, my arc lists both only had 2.
I distinctly remember it was either BCB last year or the year before. I killed 2 moderators and went, so are you in loss of lieutenant? You're like, oh no, there's another moderator over here.
Yeah. I don't. I probably needed the order mooks. That is the one good thing about having these like really cheap line.
Man has to afford his Moira snipers somehow.
Yeah, exactly. They're cheap and they still contribute to your regular orders. You're gonna see these sort of guys in factions or sectorials that don't have the best access to using that lieutenant order. Either they don't really have a good Rambo lieutenant, don't have the greatest NCO units or access to NCO, so they're there as a requirement. There's a couple examples.
So realistically, I think you might be underselling it a little bit. So there is the argument to be made that outside of exactly decap as a scenario, the lieutenant plus body double on opposite ends of the table is the safest lieutenant option in the game.
Oh, yeah, I'm saying when you look at a faction that only has this option, it's because of.
I don't think there are many factions where this is the only option.
Oh, Rigador. That's the one that comes to mind.
Well, Corregidor doesn't count because they're not a real faction.
Yeah,
right.
There's
Vanilla Nomads.
Yeah.
Vanilla Nomads is actually a pretty fair call. I don't actually know how many lieutenants they're playing nowadays, but it's definitely a very limited number at this point.
Yeah.
But these are also useful if you have a neat idea for a list and you make the list and realize that you still haven't checked the box for a lieutenant. And this is a great way to meet that requirement and with the least disruption of your amazing list idea.
And outside of Flash Pulse bots, these are realistically your cheapest regular orders. Or close to it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Just if they have, I suppose, advice for newer players, if they do have like a unique whip compared to the rest of the lieutenants in your armies, do take that damn body double, because like if you don't have a Taskmaster in a Bakunin army, that whip 13 can only be your moderator.
Yeah, well, I think it
you would be such a bold fucking Bakunin player to play 2 moderators and a Taskmaster, and the Taskmaster is your lieutenant. That would be like that is a level of like absolutely balling.
And then you go to shoot a tag, and the tag crits you and dies. You go, I'm in loss. I thought your moderators haven't been touched. It's like, yeah, I fucked myself.
I was about to say, I feel like the lieutenant's also the one with the red fury, so it can't touch his tag shit.
Which is why it was a mistake to fight the tags.
Yeah, exactly.
That is one of the most Jacob pieces of advice I've ever heard in my life. It's like, now watch out, guys. If you've got a Taskmaster lieutenant, it's like, whoa, let's walk that back to, I'm taking a Taskmaster lieutenant in Bakunin.
Oh, look, I'm Bakunin coded right now, okay? Back off.
I think the only argument I can think of for a Taskmaster is it might be the hardest to guided in Bakunin. I think that's it.
I don't know.
What is harder to set up guided on? 2 moderators or 1 Taskmaster?
That's true. Anyway, I think this is a big tangent. The whole thing is, if you're going to take 1 moderator, it's pretty much an auto take 2 because it's exponentially more value than that extra 9 points. Like,
and this is because it's the same for any line infantry.
Any line
infantry. If you're taking 1 Ghulam, take 2. If you're taking 1 Tenshi, take 2.
How much is a Ghulam? It's 10 points, right?
11.
11? Yeah, 12 points is realistically the most I'd be willing to spend on like the lieutenant plus body double play. Because 24 points realistically in most factions in the game can get you that actual lieutenant. Like for reference, I think isn't the Dao Ying is like 23 points.
Dao Ying 23, the Alpha, the Metsuke, the Magistrate.
The Magistrate is 19 points. So
if you're nuts and you're playing Shazvasti, it's 28 points for the lieutenant body double and 21 points for the moderator,
The mentor.
mentor who comes with its own decoy.
Is the
And
mentor
camera
choose
marker.
when she has Vasti?
Or is it 23 for the mentor or something?
The mentor
I could be wrong on the
Chesovsky
points.
doesn't
less
have
Swick,
a
right?
Swick penalty.
Yeah.
Because I think it's
Yeah.
24 points for the mentor. But
Yes.
if I could be wrong here.
Still
let's
cheaper
find
than
out.
2 knocks. It's definitely
22.
cheaper than 2
It's
knocks.
22 points.
Absolutely.
22.
Oh, it went down in cost. That's good.
Yeah. Okay. And wow. For a lieutenant, that profile's kind of stacked.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
You
All
think
right.
that profile's kind of stacked.
Moving
For a
on to
lieutenant.
the Automook. Jacob said Automook before. He didn't mean it. This is a different type of lieutenant. Typically, this is the upgrade over the required LT. And
Shit, I
this...
meant cheerleader.
Cheerleader. This guy, in his differences, is either able to spend his own LT order efficiently, or he's able to fuel NCO troopers with his LT order, typically with +1 LT. Majority of the time, these guys are passive LTs. We've kind of talked a little bit about a couple of them already. What these guys do is they increase the options to build and play a list. So getting an extra 2 orders for an NCO in the next group could be pretty list opening. And on top of that, it's the potential flexibility of being able to spend your LT orders in both groups. So being able to have one group with 11 orders, or the next group spend their 6 and then have 2 more for 8, is great. And a lot of factions do this really, really reliably. A couple we're going to put on the screen.
Yeah, and
Go for
that's one thing that's worth mentioning, actually, is that the lieutenant order is technically in its own pool, and as far as NCO is concerned, it can be spent regardless of the group that the lieutenant is in. So if lieutenant's in group 2, group 1 can use its order, which means if you've got 2 decent NCO pieces, one runs up and dies, let's say, you can just be like, okay, I'm just going to give the NCO orders to my other NCO.
What that also means as well is that, because this is something I've seen happen a whole bunch, is your opponent's not allowed to ask which group is generating the lieutenant order.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that is definitely a question I've heard asked a lot. And it's like, actually, you're not allowed to ask that.
Or you just say, it's in its own group.
Yeah.
Sorry, no group is generating the order. It's a model, and it's generating its own pool.
Yeah. Having an NCO in both groups means that now you have basically a wild order that can be assigned to whichever group during your turn as you see fit.
So I think the primary example is the Dao Ying. It is in every Invincible Army list and every vanilla Yujing list. It is practically the only lieutenant taken, simply because the quality of the NCO, and that it's like cheap. I just give 3 orders.
Well, it's not even that as well. It's the fact that it is, again, it's 3 orders. It also protects itself.
Yeah.
And if you need it to, it's like the hacker is the best one, because it's the only one I think you can take now in vanilla, actually.
Yes.
I think Invincibles can still take like the really cheap one, but vanilla only has the hacker, which is good because the hacker's the best one. The hacker can also use those orders if it needs to set up any of its plays with its hacking device.
Yep.
It's the entire package.
It's also for like a last ditch. I need to run a lieutenant. Well, sorry, not a lieutenant. A hacker up the board. Well, guess what? He's been a hacker the entire game. My Dao Ying. Boom, 3 orders.
Yep.
He's been a hacker the entire game, and he has 3 orders. He generates on his own 3 orders to try with.
Yep. So a lot of lists are kind of based off these kinds of units. You got the Knight Commander. Hollow Mask is kind of similar, a little bit worse version of Camouflage in terms of you don't know which one it is.
It's a lot worse.
It is a lot worse, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And the Knight Commander pretty much fuels the idea of a Seraph list by itself. Like, if the Knight Commander didn't exist and the Seraph didn't have NCO, it might be it'd be way bigger of a sell. Raven Eye, again, back in, well, Jordan, maybe, but yeah.
I have thoughts about the Knight Commander or something. I've always had a bit of I used to be super high on it, and then I actually listened to Val, and he talked me around the other way on it, and I think I'm still in that.
Well, there's your first mistake.
Talking about.
He won. He was first overall at ARC once you factored in painting and sports scores, and he deserves to be respected for that.
He absolutely represents the Victorian and the Australian Infinity community to a T.
Yeah, so I mean,
Is that good or bad?
we should.
There is no good and bad. You take from that whatever you want to take from that. I'm just simply stating that he represents the Victorian and the Australian community to a T.
I seriously have no idea how to feel about that. Most of the time, these lieutenants also have the +1 order.
Yes.
So Dao Ying, +1 order, Knight Commander, +1 order, Raven Knight, +1 order. We have an example there of the Tunguska Interventor because they can very effectively use their hacking device to complete objectives, but also just fucking blow something's brain.
So the Interventor is it falls in that spot of spends its LT order super well in terms of white noise and cyber mask.
Or it feeds another unit.
Or it feeds another unit. There are some decent NCOs in Vanilla Nomads.
And let's be honest, no one wants to pick a fight with a fucking Interventor.
Not with Trinity, no.
No one wants to try and win. No one wants to try and pitcher guided a fucking Interventor.
No.
Like, it is an awful experience to look at that thing and go BTS 9, and there is always the Interventor KHD deployed next to it. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to do?
Yep.
Use a gun.
Yep.
Okay, Trent.
The best hacking program. Gun.
Zombie rifle.
Yeah, this is where you want that drop troop.
Yep.
These lieutenants are actually getting quite a bit more common.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you pay that extra point, or you pay the extra points, you save the slot, and you kind of get the bonus of the extra order and stuff. I still think a line infantry and a decoy is safer, but this is if you want to pull as much efficiency out of your list as possible.
The line infantry is safer. It depends though. Like the Dao Ying, I think, is one of the safest lieutenants in the game.
Yeah.
Like
I don't think it's to the point of safety where you can just leave it though. Like it's not.
I think it is.
But
It's
I think it's pretty close to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have
reckon?
to over-invest to get to it.
I've only ever hunted one once, and we were playing decap, and I had the end for Uberfall Commando. It's the only reason I ever hunted it. Otherwise, it's like a turn 2, if I'm lucky,
Fair
turn
enough.
3 maybe.
Fair
Did
enough.
you roll like 3? Did you get to roll like 3 discovers with that?
Yeah, because I had all the pupniks looking at it. I surrounded it with pupniks and went 3 discovers.
Yeah, no, the Dao Ying is just, it's so safe. It's the Mimetism 3 camo marker, like, it's just, yeah, it is just so difficult to actually, like, get a hold of that thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Any more on the order mook? No.
I think it's a bit of like a nebulous classification. Like, if you just want to call it, it's an efficient lieutenant that has the option that some of them use their own orders or some of them just fuel NCOs. There's definitely a lot of like granularity in there of like, you can see even in the ones we've listed here, there's like 2 of them that use their own orders really efficiently, and there's another 2 where the point is very clear of like, it fuels the NCOs of the faction.
I think the main difference between what we'll cover later is the fact that they are squishy.
Yeah.
They're not going to deal with a firefight, which is different to what we'll cover later.
Sure.
And that said,
Nice.
there is overlap between these, and there are many lieutenants in the game that will fit into 2 or 3 of these categories.
Oh yeah, this isn't like word of gospel. This isn't like very well scientifically categorized. It's like, it's a lot of vibes.
Like, we
There's
had
a
to
lot of
draw
vibes
categories
going on here.
somewhere.
Yeah, you have to try. And again, you're going to be able to find the exceptions to the rule without even looking. What I was going to try and say though, I personally think that Raven Eye Lieutenant in Torchlight is a little bit of a trap. I don't think it's great. I think it's a bit of a hard sell for me personally. It was also one of the first times where I was like, oh, CB really like this style of lieutenant, where they just sort of slap an extra order on there and they're like, yeah, some people are going to take this.
I think the reason you're a little low on the Raven Eye is because the NCO options from N4 to N5 got a lot worse. I think
Even in 4 of the Raven Eye specifically, like you looked at the NCOs in Torchlight, which is the only place you can take this lieutenant option, and it's like Jamie Arantes is so expensive, but I know people really like her now, so like I feel like it might be a bit of like N4 brain on my end of things.
N4 was mostly Vidocq and Strider. N5 is definitely like parachutist Jamie.
Sorry, I pulled the face. I just pulled up the picture of the Raven Eye.
There's the you pay and you get the special edition one.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, we shall move on to. We'll go on, Nick.
The extra lieutenant order definitely depends on faction because it relies on NCO, and having great NCO plus 1 lieutenant order, golden. If you have 1 or 2 NCOs in your faction and you may not have a good use for them, plus 1 lieutenant order, not quite as valuable.
Yeah, like you can find a lieutenant order as a Bakunin, but you're not going to feed it into a fucking rounder.
Yeah, I think the primary difference between the requirement and the automook is the actual spending of the LT orders.
Yes.
All right, move on to the fancy stuff, the commander. Now, the difference between a like +1 LT automook and a commander is the commander is going to provide you with those extra skills, such as counterintelligence, which is going to limit the amount of orders you can be docked and the amount of command tokens you're allowed to spend on your first turn. They're going to give you extra command tokens very regularly, and some of them will have Strategos, which will make their lieutenant order regular and will let you have an extra trooper in reserve. These guys,
they are Strategos level 2, they allow you to freely move 1 model between combat groups during your tactical phase.
I haven't used Strategos in ages. Does it also allow you to reserve an extra dude at
yes,
level 1?
Level
Tristan
1.
literally said that, Jake.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Level 1 gets an extra reserve, and it becomes the lieutenant becomes lieutenant order or orders
becomes regular.
Noting level 2, you can start to shuffle.
Noting for anyone who's had the thought, it is optional if you want to use it to maintain limited insertion for the first turn. It is a possibility. These commander lieutenants can be active or passive. An active one could be the Marut. Passive one is something like an Alpha. These guys really increase the options to build and play a list. You can use them to build way stronger Alpha Strikes. You can use them to do extra reserve drops. For example, you could reserve 3 troopers going first if you wanted to. You are going to get extra coordinated orders out of that. You could get extra converting irregular orders out of that. So it really helps you if you go into loss as well.
There's a little bit of, other than counterintelligence, there's a little bit of extra finesse with these guys that once you sort of get the hang of, right? That extra command token, and the use of Strategos, moving guys around, or even just the ability to reserve 2 or up to 3, can actually be hugely impactful in the ability to be like, I'm going to have 3 really important dudes. I mean, hell, that's an entire Harris.
Oh yeah,
right.
Strategos level 1. If you go first, you can reserve a Harris.
Yeah.
Well, it's very typical. I think Jordan used to do this when he played Morats, is with Kornak, you just reserve all of your Swick.
Yep.
And you just go.
Yeah.
There's very few things in the game that feel as comforting as reserving 4.5 Swick.
So a couple of examples here. They're incredibly popular profiles. Almost like if you're building a mission agnostic list, this is almost always the LT you're going to pick. So for O12, we've got the Alpha. For Pano, we have the Magistrates. For Aleph and OSS, we have the Shukra. And for TAC, we have Veronin. I don't actually remember if he can be...
I do not think Vanilla Aleph gets the Shukra Lieutenant.
Don't they?
No, they don't.
Don't they? Okay.
They only get the chain of command.
Yeah, they only get the chain of command.
Who in the world made that Magistrate? Holy crap.
Magistrate's very good.
Fucking profile.
And then, once you get it in Kestrel as well, where you have the Jackals you can throw with him to protect him even better, it's insane.
But also the idea that he has counterintelligence, a lieutenant with strategos, and converts cheap irregular orders regular. It's nuts.
It's like someone mashed a Shukra and an Osnat together.
Yeah, like, man, for the points, Shuka's 24 points compared to his 23.
These types of lieutenants are becoming way more common as well.
They are.
We have the Metsuke in Shinden. We have the Magistrate in Kestrel. I want to say nearly every faction has one, except maybe Combined. Well, Combined have Kornak.
Mm-hmm.
Combined can't take Kornak as a lieutenant, I think.
As the faction in general, so Morats gets Kornak.
Yeah, Morats gets Kornak.
The Avatar?
Yeah, the Avatar counts.
Although it's far less than it used to be.
Yeah.
The other thing that's a little bit unique to these commanders, depending on the faction, is they can tend to be on an S4 base and have the skill guard. So that can be seen in the Alpha unit, can be seen in Veronin, can be seen in the Demonist. Don't know if there's any more. I thought ISS was going to get one with the Palace Guard, but for whatever reason, it was not a lieutenant. Don't know why. Yeah, they get a guard skill, which is very good for defending what will end up being a relatively obvious lieutenant. Because if you
It does
put them
make them
into,
harder to hide, though.
It does. Yep.
Yes, of course it does. But what it allows you to do is they can defend themselves quite well. The amount of times that Val has walked Verona up and been like, choose between three things. Every single decision you make is wrong.
You're trading the incredible obviousness of this lieutenant for the extra skills that you get in counterintelligence and strategos.
Yeah,
Yes.
so you're gonna wanna do the layer defense. You're gonna wanna put them in difficult to reach spots because most of the time they're too expensive to have two of them, or you can't have two of them in the case of like a character.
Yeah.
I will make the note looking at these profiles. Biometric visor is not normally a quality of these. We just happen to pick 3 that have biometric visors.
Sure.
Yeah.
What a
And
piece of equipment.
there are a couple active ones. The Marut and Hector are the ones that come to mind. They provide those skills. They're incredibly obvious LTs. But you're spending a lot more points just to get, wounds and shooty and all that kind of thing.
Even the Demonist has the biometric visor.
Yeah, all the S4 ones do.
I could be wrong then. So we mentioned it before. Kornak is probably another good example here where he's not quite a passive lieutenant, not quite an active lieutenant, but definitely fits the commander role. Where
He defends himself really well. Like,
And-
the number of skills that profile has just stapled onto it is insane.
He rolled booty about 10 times.
He did.
he's a really good backup gun that most people don't expect.
People ask what BS he is, and they're like, oh, he's like BS 12, right? It's like, no, BS 14.
14, best in faction.
Yeah, best in faction.
Mm-hmm.
The only other two I can think of is Saladin and Sun Tzu.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Does Sun Tzu have special skills? He must. He has Strategos, doesn't he? He has Strategos level 2. Of course he does.
At the very least, I was about to say, yeah, he does. But the other thing is, I think he's heavy infantry. I think that's the only one you can have now.
Yeah, he is. But he's not exactly like, rawr, I want to go hit things with my stick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Keep in mind, anyone who loves Saladin, there are 2 versions of Saladin that have minor differences between them. I can't remember them exactly, but I think one gets an extra command token and one is Strategos level 2 instead of level 1. And then there are some profile different ones.
Yeah, Hawk is
Strategos level 2.
Level 2.
And then the Star Martyr one
12.
is +1 command token, I think. I think that's the difference.
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway, they are different. Just make sure that you don't assume from one to the other. And yeah, these are great lieutenants. Not my favorite, but a staple, really. And this is almost the more efficient you want your list, the more you're kind of playing with fire. Like all of these guys on the table right now are just guided heaven.
Yeah.
It's like especially with the Strategos and counterintelligence one, you're essentially going, I don't want to deal with you minusing any of my tokens. I'll have an extra order, and if you do take one, I only lose one, which is the extra order I just got.
You can think of it as completely negating the docking of an order because you half the dock amount and you add an extra order back into that group.
But what tends to happen is your opponent goes, "Oh, you have a counterintelligence. Most likely, I'm not going to dock any of the orders," and you just end up
Yep.
3 orders, I guess.
Yes. Usually they don't. Sometimes they do because they're lazy.
I always do it. I just like whatever.
Or they brought someone with extra command tokens. You're like, well, I'm not going to use it anyways. Here.
Yeah.
One thing to note as these profiles get more complicated, especially with Strategos, usually when you have Strategos, you have, regardless of whether it's a character or not, told your opponent who your lieutenant is.
Yes.
Similarly, with extra lieutenant orders and extra command tokens, that will very quickly narrow down which models can be your lieutenant, and often may just single it out.
Yep.
Yeah, it's rare. I think CA is the only faction with like 2 that you could like legitimately hide, which is like the Skivaros and the Avatar.
Skivaros doesn't count anymore.
Does not exist anymore.
Oh, doesn't it?
You're thinking about the Avatar. You're thinking about the Anathematic and the Chrontid. They're both whip 16.
Yeah.
Very, very lovely LTs. All right. The tiniest subtopic of lieutenants ever that we have to talk about because they're very important.
There's 2 of them.
Yeah. So this is very niche. And is our first active lieutenant.
All right, Jordan, you love one of these 2, so you can take us away.
Sure. So the inspiration refers to the skill Inspiring Leadership. It is a free coordinated order using your lieutenant order. The LT must be the spearhead for this, I think.
No, it just has to be. No, it just has to be part of it. Just has to be included.
Just has to be a part of it, and convert. And the other secondary effect is it converts all irregular orders regular while they are your lieutenant. And yeah, it changes. Go ahead.
It makes the units regular.
Oh, it actually changes their training to regular.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yes,
so you can coordinate your entire army regardless.
So it does actually mean that in her fire team with Helots, Jorn has a 10-inch fire team range then.
I suppose so.
Because they're all regular. Yep.
Yep, cool. Neat. It does change.
Stupidest fucking skill ever. Aside from Bang Bomb.
It's a really good skill.
No, it just makes no sense. Makes no sense. Anyway, go on.
The fact that it makes retreat not work is very much a flavor touch more than it is anything else.
Yeah.
It's like, so I have to have Jean and like one other thing alive, and I don't go into retreat, I guess.
Yeah.
It's very much a flavor touch, which is neat,
Shield the
I
arc
guess.
and 1 flashpoint spot against the world.
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, everything is regular and has courage. And again, there are 2 of these in the game. There's Jean and there is William Wallace. It's definitely a design space where you can see more stuff showing up.
Yep.
Like Aleph has definitely got its pick of some Greek heroes who could sort of fill in the inspiring leadership role.
Give me Genghis Khan.
Jason, off the top of my head, with the Argonauts.
Yeah, there's plenty of space where I think it would be nice to almost see maybe an inspiring leadership character in each faction that might be pushing it.
No, that's too much. Again, like I think realistically there's enough airspace for maybe 4 or 5 of them total.
Yeah.
Like that feels sort of like the safe number to, because it's an extremely powerful skill. Like there are certain factions in the game where you just could not fathom giving them access to this skill. Like assassins stand out to me, like Hackislam as a faction stands out to me as well.
Just armies become your line.
Yeah, where you
Vanilla
could just
CA.
can't. Yeah, Vanilla CA. You definitely couldn't. Vanilla CA is a potential just because like the irregulars have gotten so much worse in this edition.
Vanilla CA still doesn't need to be better than it is.
It doesn't need it to be better.
They already... total 4-point regular orders?
Nah, they're bad.
So old-timey net rods.
The The one thing about this particular skill is kind of more so than any of the other lieutenants that we are. It's a bit too much to say that they affect your list building heavily in the fact that war cores, tech B,
Tech B is regular.
Tech B is regular in
Tech
this season.
B is regular now.
Tech B's regular now.
But like any of the not antipodes, bearpodes, or any of the regular guys that you might put into, let's say, Cosmoflot.
Regular.
Fuck, they are too. They don't have the irregular one anymore.
So the big ones are Joan is Warcore and like Helots.
And motorized bounty hunter.
And motorized bounty hunters, yep. And
yeah.
and Wallace is a lot of like Ermendinos and Catarans. Those are the big ones now.
Yeah.
So, like as you're saying, this inspiring leadership is probably the most impactful skill on list building.
Yep.
Because having everything be regular and have courage greatly changes how individual profiles will play.
Yeah,
So,
I do think people tend to over focus on the way it changes like regular to regular. The stronger part of this skill is a free coordinated order every turn.
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
the fact that you are taking something which nominally costs a command token to do for free every turn is so good.
Yeah. If you have 3 fast units, right, even though these particular commanders are fast in and of themselves, if you have 3 fast units, you get to move them their full distance for free. It's practically like a better impetuous order up the table. Like you just every single turn you should be using the lieutenant order to do this and run up. That's it. Done.
Wallace can throw 4 smokes with a single order now. If he has some Ermendinos or a Bearpod or whatever that has smoke. It's really good considering it's practically 3 free command tokens if you get it the whole distance. And they do define their faction very heavily. I know a lot of people think that, you know, they play vanilla and they just take they just take the magistrate kind of thing.
Or the 2 Fenix.
Is that really a thing? 2 Fenix?
It depends on like who you talk to. There is a very vocal subsection of players who think that the best thing you can do in vanilla like Pano is 2 Fenix.
Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, I could say all that, but like as soon as you put Joan in the list, it just switches something in your head and you go, I want like my motorized bounty hunter and warcall are just like the second and third thing that are going in the list no matter what.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's Jordan's favorite LT.
Yep.
With the no retreat, I think that's with Joan, that's almost never coming up because she's almost enough to prevent retreat by herself.
Yeah.
But I guess more with William Wallace, not being able to go into retreat sometimes is a curse because if you're down that hard, you might just want the game to end so you can get one last I push a button and then walk away and close the game out.
I would almost say if you're in that situation with Joan, it's even more of a curse because you are truly fucked. At the very least, William Wallace could have, you know, like 2 or 3 Ermendinos, some specialists, stuff like that.
It's going to be a circumstance that like happens 1 in a million games because I played Joan for a while and I played Wallace for an entire season and I never had a situation where I went into retreat and Wallace was still alive. So
yeah,
not worth thinking about too much.
Last thing to point out is these guys tend to be pretty beefy. Joan being 2 wounds, heavy infantry. Wallace being Ariadna beefy.
Lead from the front. Yep. All right. Active lieutenants. The alpha. The expensive, the high power level, the units that excel at combat and also happen to be a lieutenant. They can make a good use of their own LT order because they like shooting stuff or smacking stuff. And as Nick has put it, it's kind of like pseudo-tactical awareness. These lieutenants typically are pretty obvious as well. So using that LT order isn't too much of a disadvantage. They do alter list construction due to how much they cost and covering roles beyond the LT. For an example, is the Zeta is a tag and an LT. Tags, they define list building already, and it being your lieutenant is going to define it even more. So, how do you protect your big beefy alpha lieutenant? Well, most of the time, especially in the tags case, they have 2+ wounds, and they have high armor and high BTS. There are a couple of them that get marker states. And of course, chain of command is an option, although I don't think Jordan's very happy with it.
Well, it depends on the faction. Like, if you're taking a Zeta, realistically, you're going to take a Ment because it's the most dirt cheap chain of command in the game and costs about the same as your line infantry do.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, there are certainly some line infantry options that
there are exceptions to the rule of my disdain for chain of command. They exist.
Unfortunately, Infinity is all about exceptions.
Yep.
Don't listen to him, listeners. He still thinks you're a coward.
Jordan definitely called me a coward for taking the Vault chain of command, and I'm like, okay, fine, I won't take the Vault chain of command. Calm down, I'll take the killer hacker. Don't beat me to death.
What do you mean you're paying more points for a worse Vault?
Yeah, but then I can use Jones so aggressively. Anyway.
There's a difference between using Joan aggressively and I'm going to face check a Red Eye outside of Spitfire range bands.
I won that game.
Yeah, you did. You had no right to, though. I was there. I watched it.
These ones you definitely want to have that survival strategy for, because you are intending to put them into gunfights. You are intending to put them into situations where they will take wounds. So knowing what you're going to do when they take wounds and how you're getting them back out and not letting them die is important.
I think one of the biggest things with these guys is knowing not to overextend them. They are good gunfighters. They are relatively survivable, but they are still a big key to your army. Yeah. So unless you've got a really good freaking plan or things are going really fucking well, don't end up with your LT, your alpha LT, on your opponent's deployment zone, ready to face the entirety of the rest of the army that he left alive.
For models like the Zeta, like the Cutter as well, who definitely fits into this category, a really good, I've said it before, I'll say it again, a really good habit to get into is before you start whatever your alpha run is with them, is to take 2 to 3 orders, set them aside. Those orders are your put your toys away orders. They are there for you to get that model back to safety as much as you possibly can at the end of a run.
More than likely, you're going to be wanting to be on your side of the board.
Yep. Typically, the way I would kind of define the alpha unit, the alpha lieutenant, is it's the first thing you're looking to spend orders on. So, like, as soon as I finish deployment and stuff, I have a Zeta on the table, or pretty much any other tag lieutenant, you go, what AROs is my Zeta about to knock over? Or Achilles goes, my goal is to sprint up the table. Can I do it, or do I need to throw smoke first?
What is the most one-directional path to my opponent's deployment zone?
Yes. Yeah. Sogarat is kind of a mini tag in and of itself.
It's an S5 tag.
It has the AP HMG. It doesn't have the +1 damage, but base attack -3 is basically mathematically the same. Moving on, we have a little bit of those, maybe not I'm here to shoot all the arrows, but I'm definitely doing stuff on the first turn.
Yeah, so, like the tack wheel is definitely not going to kill a bunch of stuff. It's here because it sits in group 2, and it works backwards from the worst possible scenario for your opponent, and then spends those orders farting its way up the table to get you there.
Yeah, I think when you see a lieutenant who is an alpha but technically is like subpar compared to the ones we showed before, is that they are in factions with really easy access to chain of command. So the Keltars are going to be everywhere in your attack wheel. It costs 6 points to make it a chain of command. Why wouldn't you
That's not just the chain of command upgrade you're getting either. It gets you like another state issued friend, doesn't it?
You're going to take the Keltars. It takes 6 points to make it so that the tack wheel can do whatever the fuck it wants, right? And you've also got like chain of command decoys. It's great. You may as well have an active Toha lieutenant, even if it's technically garbage. Hatamoto is the same. It's not super expensive to have a I don't remember what the name of the dude's called. Oh,
Tanuki chain.
Sorry,
chain
I was
of command.
thinking of the other one, but yeah, for Oban.
Kempe.
But still, it's relatively cheap. The Hatamoto is pretty fucking good. In fact, it's kind of incredible. But
it's baby Achilles, but it's still,
Achilles with some training wheels on.
Yeah, but those training wheels are pretty small. It's still pretty.
It's pretty good. But you're looking at like.
This slide is definitely where it gets a little bit, like our classification gets a little bit more nebulous, because this group will bleed into the next group we talk about, and members of the next group we talk about can definitely bleed back into this group.
Yeah.
Jacob did make a really good point here. One of the defining features of alpha-type lieutenants is they either present a really easy way to protect themselves, which is like with your cutter, you have the marker state you can drop back into, or they have really, really good access to cheap chain of command, like your Zeta has with Ments, or they're a model like Achilles, who is just a fucking pain to deal with. Nanoscreen in N5 makes dealing with a model like Achilles awful.
Yep.
I mean, he pretty much has no disadvantage. You want him in Frenzy because it's an extra fucking order.
Yep.
All right, very cool. So the difference between this group and the next group, I would say, is these guys want to spend their orders on turn 1, and I think the jack of all trade lieutenants want to spend their orders maybe not on turn 1, but on turn 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they want to spend like 5 orders a turn every turn.
Essentially, these guys are just not out for blood like the last ones we covered. They've got they can fight, they can survive, but they can also complete your missions. I think a lot of them can probably complete on their own, like half, if not more, of the classified deck. Looking at you, Boktar.
Yeah, so we're talking about specialists, above average stats, and decent to very deep toolboxes. They can be linked or unlinked. They generally have above average resilience in terms of they are 2 wound with decent armor. They fill multiple roles well, so they can be decent at shooting. They have some CC deterrence. They press buttons. Some of them have good movement skills. Some of them are hackers. Some of them are paramedics, that kind of thing. They're just the kind of thing that if you have 7 orders on your turn 3, nearly all the time you're going to spend all of those orders on this one dude to do this thing.
Yeah. A word of caution, I think, for these jack of all trades ones is more so than the alpha ones, which your opponent might be able to sort of ignore and lock down, not necessarily kill. Your opponent will come for these guys because they need to get rid of them, right? They can do too much in your army to just be left alone.
Yeah. So we're talking about things. Go on.
I was gonna say you could feed your helots to Achilles, and you'd be like, "Cool, Achilles spent all his orders killing my fucking helots." But people are gonna want to kill your Azura, and I can tell you right now, you want to kill the fucking Caronted.
Yeah, like those lieutenants specifically are a little, like the Asura especially, if you are going second, is vulnerable to getting her turn 1. She doesn't, like that hacker doesn't protect itself horrifically well.
Yep.
As you can see here from the ones pictured on the Jack of all trades, one of these things is not like the others. One of these things might not belong and is here because a particular host will not shut up about it.
For reference, we have the Asura, we have Gabriel Deferson, we have the Caronted, and we have the Boktar. I don't think it's unreasonable to put the Boktar next to them. It isn't a hacker, I understand, but it does fill a role very similar.
I think the Boktar is still in this category, but it's probably one of the weaker examples. But it also has a cost to match.
It's a nepotism pick.
No.
Yes,
It's not a
It
nepotism.
absolutely is a nepotism
You're
pick.
just taking the piss now. It's not a
No, it's
nepotism.
absolutely a nepotism
No,
pick.
it's not. Out of all of these, the Boktar is arguably the best shooter, aside from the fact that maybe DeFerson has a Spitfire, but the Boktar has MSV1 and Mimetism. It's also the most mobile by a significant amount.
X-Visor plasma rifle.
Yeah, it doesn't have Mimetism or MSV1. And it's 30 points, fucking 23 points less. The
Gabriel
Boktar...
DeFerson is a BS-14 Spitfire.
Brother, Mimetism.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. The Boktar is the fastest by a landslide. It's still a
I'm effective from 8 to 16 inches.
You can talk shit all you want about the Boktar. It's fucking incredible. And look, it does have a little bit of Huck flavor, you know, like I'm fucking a little bit worse than everyone else, you know? That's fine. It's still really fucking good. Yes, you could fish and I will fucking bite every single time.
Every single time.
Whatever, Jordan, you fucking asshole.
But yeah, the jack of all trades, like much like the Dao Ying category as well. I can't remember, was that the Mook category we had that one as?
Yep.
Yeah.
Automook. Yeah, the jack of all trades is also probably one of the most nebulous sort of category of LTs. There is like half the LTs in the game potentially could fit into this category.
Yeah.
There's an argument the Interventor can go here.
Yeah, but in general, you're looking at something 2 wounds, have like decentish armor, a specialist in some respect, and hopefully a gun that's longer range than an SMG.
Well, I think yes, longer than SMG. I will agree with that one. I think the difference between the Jack of all trades versus the Alpha Lieutenant is they both want to spend a bunch of orders. The Alpha wants to do it for combat and like shooting or punching, and the Jack of all trades wants to spend orders doing more control, doing scenarios, positioning, and more of the soft game, unless that's Trinity, than the more direct Alpha.
Mm.
Yeah, like you're going to win your game if when you use the previous alphas, if they're in your opponent's face. These jack of all trades will win your game without necessarily having to go past the halfway mark, depending on the scenario.
It's a way of, I can shoot this thing, press this button, and do a classified in one unit.
Yep.
Which is something not an Interventor can't necessarily do.
Yeah.
Alright, he's not going to fight me anymore. Alright. Jordan!
Look, I got exactly what I wanted out of that. So
Yeah, you did, I know. Alright.
Didn't even have to try.
Who wants to take us through the traps of the lieutenants?
Sure. So, some of the traps for lieutenants, making them too obvious. So this would be stuff like we talked about where you've only got one model on the board who could legally be your lieutenant. And remember that the lieutenant's whip is known. So if you roll a whip 14 and you have one model on the board with a whip 14, they already know who your lieutenant is. Similarly, if you're losing like lieutenant decoys, but you don't set them up equally. So if you're very obviously protecting one and ignoring the other, you've probably telegraphed which one they should go for, and it's no longer a 50-50 shot for your opponent.
Yep.
Conversely, it can be a really good point of putting your decoy in a really hard to reach spot and then have your opponent waste their time killing what they really thought was your LT.
Yeah. Remember that the lieutenant order is a resource, so don't forget to use it. If you've got a just baseline line infantry trooper yeah, it might not be useful to have it flag them on turn 1 or 2, but there's no turn 4, so if you want to use it on them for turn 3 and it's not going to break a fire team, go for it. Like, what's the worst that happens? They die and you don't go into loss because there's no turn 4. That can be very useful when you've got down to only a few models, and suddenly even your model with the combi, if they've got enough orders, can get into a decent position and shoot out a specialist.
Yep. I think there's been many a moderator that has shot Norkius in the face, or stood up, long bombed a shot on like a 4, and oh, I crit, oh, he did, oh, does that mean I win the game? Yay!
A surprising number of times has your like absolute mook of a man just lined it up that once.
Yep.
Still remember the time they put wounds on a fucking Marut.
So while lieutenants often, especially the more filler ones, go into fire teams to increase their fire team level, be careful with putting them into mobile fire teams that want to move up the board, because you're now decreasing the number of orders that your opponent needs to go attack your lieutenant. If you move up the board, it's going to increase their risk. It's going to decrease the amount of work your opponent has to do. Think twice about it, but there are usually good reasons to do it, but know the risk that you're putting yourself in. Similarly, with overextending that way, if you've got a hacking lieutenant, be very careful about overextending your repeater nets. Yes, you'll have a firewall on the way back, but if they're burst 3 to your burst 1, and they have more orders to throw into, they can burn through your firewall.
Yeah, it only takes potentially one shitty roll, and your lieutenant's gone. Yep. I would almost say if you're going to take a lieutenant hacker, probably be reserved in your like hacking net. If you're going to put it down, make sure you put it down, or I would probably say actually kill all the other hackers first, and then start putting down that net.
It's contextual, isn't it? It's all contextual on the faction you're playing against.
Yeah,
and
if you're playing Ariadne, go for it.
How many hackers you've brought yourself aside from the LT hacker? It's a choice. I wouldn't pick a LT hacker lightly without thinking about it.
Yeah.
When we're talking about using the NCO orders, you need to think about how you're organizing which group has lieutenant, which group has the NCOs, especially if your lieutenant wants to spend their own orders. It can be beneficial to have it spread out more. Similarly, if you have multiple NCOs, have them spread out so that you can better distribute where that order goes, and they're not competing for the same orders that are already assigned to groups.
I think the best example I can think of is like a hack Tau in group 1, and then maybe like a Bishi in group 2. Like you don't really want both of those in the same group.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
The other thing, I don't think we mentioned, is in Strategos, the lieutenant order will go into their group.
Yes. So if you're running Strategos and NCOs, definitely have them in the separate groups, because if the Strategos orders get transformed into regulars, they go into the lieutenant's group. And if you save them and don't transform them, then they can go through the NCO into the other group. When you've got an active lieutenant, Jordan covered this, be wary of overextending them, because they will die if your opponent throws enough into it. So make sure you're able to retreat them, but also consider the risks and whether it's worth having them take the fight or someone else. I'm not quite sure who put this example in, fighting a Noctifer with Joan, but I think I remember that game, so I'm guessing it was Tristan, because I think that was my Noctifer.
There's only one person I know who's willing to do something as stupid as that with John, and it is Tristan.
It was not a bad roll. It was 1-9 versus 4 9s.
Yeah.
1-9 versus 4-9s, right? And we both whiffed entirely twice, and then Nick smashed me on the third roll, and I took 2 wounds, and I went, I don't need to kill this Noctifer. I don't know why I did this.
Is it general religious as well?
Why you went for it?
She's courageous. She has inspiring leadership.
Oh,
yeah. But it is one of those, take a step back. Do I really need to risk this? For instance, is that Noctifer actually watching anything necessary for the rest of the game, even though it's in an end game state?
Yeah. It's one of those situations where the math might support you well. Like 1-9 v 4-9s is, that's a pretty good fight against a thing with Mim 6. But you have to sit there and go, is the absolute worst failure state of this result worth it? And for me, it probably wasn't. Like, you crit Joan, she explodes, I go, that's the game.
Yeah. Well, if it was a situation where the Noctifer was also overlooking a critical area in a different side of the board, and that was your best gun, it probably would be worth it. To add
context to that, because I tried to kill it with a Bolt MSV1 sniper first, that just got crit off the table. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I tried to do the right thing, and it didn't work. So I guess I got to do the other thing now. Anyway, that's just
for 8 many orders, totally worth it.
Anyways, that's something I need to get better at. But yes.
Okay.
Jordan's just looking at, just laughing and looking at me with disdain. Okay.
Next up,
it's Jordan's tab.
Yes.
Lieutenant Traps, Chain of Command.
Oh boy. Okay. Cool. So Chain of Command is another thing that new players will tend to focus on pretty heavily. Like, as soon as they kind of realize that Lieutenant dying is bad, they'll then look at their Chain of Command options, and very frequently, Chain of Command is... I don't know how much... The skill Chain of Command, I don't think actually costs that much, but profiles it's on tend to be jacked up in price.
I think Cock costs a shitload. I think it's like 2 points over a Forward Observer.
I think the biggest issue with it as well is it often costs some amount of SWIC.
It costs as much as a hacking device, I think. A regular hacking device.
It could be pretty bad.
So generally,
it's somewhere in that 4 to 6 points, and a lot of times it has SWIC associated with it.
Yeah. So again, it adds cost where you don't necessarily want cost to be added. So when you potentially are looking at running a Chain of Command troop, the thing you need to look at is what are those points able to get me at the same cost, which is why I actually don't mind the Ment. Because it's 13, 14 points, and in Vanilla 012 and Torchlight as well, there aren't many things at that points cost.
Torchlight, absolutely. In 012, it's like, I'm replacing this with a Raven Eye or a Varangian or a Kappa Hacker. And you're sitting there going, well, if I'm taking a Zeta LT, I can trade 1 Varangian for the fact that I can throw this motherfucker wherever I want.
Yeah, it's the reason why sometimes I kind of argue for the Myrmidon Officer, because you do get Eclipse grenades with her, which is now pretty rare.
Yeah, the Myrmidon Officer, you're not running a Myrmidon Officer because it has Chain of Command, you're running it because it is your only source of Eclipse in the faction now.
Yeah, and you just get a nice bonus from it.
Yeah. So yeah, you wanna look at the points cost and make sure that it isn't egregious. And then the next thing you want to look at is, are you wasting slots? Is it more expensive to add this Chain of Command troop than it would be to just take line infantry plus decoy? That sort of because it is, at the end of the day, it's going to be Lieutenant plus Chain of Command, or decoy plus Lieutenant. And you only have 15 slots in a list. It's why I've seen a lot of arguments, people talking about the NCO cutter, and it turns into this thing of so I'm using 3 of my 15 slots on cutter, Lieutenant, and then decoy as well.
But it's like
That's a lot.
you take NCO cutter and then a magistrate, and you're like, well, NCO's kind of shit, eh?
Or like a fennec, or two fennecs,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
It can, however, also ensure your opponent doesn't try and assassinate your lieutenant because it isn't going to force you to lose one turn. Yeah. Again, cock is always a bit of a hard sell sometimes because a lot of the time it is just so expensive for what you get. But you do need to be good at recognizing when it is surprisingly affordable. Again, you're always just going to come back to the Ment as being like the shining example of like, good, cheap.
Yeah, the other time is sometimes it's a nice, like, I think the best one I can think of is in JSA, the Kempetai. Is like a nice upgrade on a Kasotsu, and you get Chain of Command with it. And it's
JSA has a couple of Chain of Command options, which, like, while not cheap, they have like other stuff going on that makes them like appealing enough. But when you don't run cock, you of course run into sort of the general risks associated with that, which is stuff like oops, loss of lieutenant, giving your opponent opportunities to take greater risks in assassinating your lieutenant. You lose a trooper that can do the HVT assassination card. And if you're a fucking madman taking Lieutenant Hawkwood and putting him up on ARO duty, you could just randomly lose your lieutenant that way. Don't do that. Don't take Hawkwood Lieutenant, please.
Do the better thing and put your Dao Ying multi-sniper.
Hell yeah!
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I have the funniest story about the Dao Ying multi-sniper.
Don't encourage people to
No,
do
this is totally a Tristan story as well.
It is.
I was...
Oh, go ahead, Tristan.
I was playing Dante. I was playing Invincible Army. I'm like, let's have a fun game. Dao Ying multi-sniper on ARO. As a camo marker, obviously. Dante has no idea what it is. He peeks the camo, old camo, in a link. Crit the camo, it explodes off the table. Camo HMG.
You do not deserve that. You don't know.
Camo
you don't deserve
Camo
this.
HMG peaks. I crit the Camo HMG off the table. Literally 10 minutes into the game, Dante, he shakes my hand and goes home.
I would too.
We're not even on like fucking like what the fuck, Tabletop Simulator. We're not on TTS or anything. We're at House of War, and he rocks up for 30 minutes and then goes home. God. It's so fucking funny.
So bad.
Anyways,
yeah, so
Jordan's basically saying don't fuck with Hawkwood. I kind of put that in there because I know some new players are going to sit there and go, oh my god, I get +1 LT order, there's a bunch of NCOs, and he's a cool ARO piece. Yeah, and then I take Chain of Command, and then you're like,
don't do that.
Don't
do that.
But remember, in that case, you're going, yay, +1 lieutenant order for NCOs, and I'm going to have him put ARO so he can have Chain of Command to back him up. But then he dies, and the Chain of Command takes over, and you don't have +1 lieutenant order anymore.
You are, in that scenario, locking 4 or 5 models into your list, and all of them are relatively expensive, like 20 points plus. So you're basically determining what your list is by doing that.
You pretty much want to look at cock as... You want to be able to look at Chain of Command as being either necessary or free.
I would also add into that, if you are a newer player who wants that extra security, that's an okay thing to do. It means that you have one less thing you have to worry about and learn how to deal with.
Yep.
It is a very good stepping stone. And then once you get more confident with protecting your lieutenant and dealing with loss if it does happen, you find you suddenly have more points to play with.
Absolutely. Lieutenant opportunities. So, lieutenants, obviously, as we've mentioned 4 or 5 times already, they change your list building. Cheap LTs pull points from elsewhere. With Strategos, there are some people out there that favor going 14 troops plus Strategos rather than the regular 15, because same amount of orders, but then it also gets you that counterintelligence, it gets you that +1 command token, might get you that extra little bit. That extra reserve drop is actually disgustingly good when you know how to use it properly.
Yeah. Well, 14
And it can-
models that
and it can
generate
just
15
be-
orders are going to have more points spent on each of those. They'll be better units than 15 models that generate 15 orders.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is that the one thing with the dropping like a regular order and having strategos is, that could be upwards of like 25 points that you slap into another unit. So instead of having, I don't know, can't think of a good example right now. But
That's
instead
all
of having that medium infantry, suddenly it's a heavy infantry.
I think a big example, like I'm an O12 guy, play O12. You take the alpha, you then have the opportunity of taking a Zeta. You could cut one troop out and maybe upgrade something to something more mid-range, like a Raptor or Hippolyta or something like that, and still maintain those orders.
Or better yet, now I think about it, it allows you to upgrade a troop potentially to that really expensive hidden deployment infiltrator, that the efficiency you gain from having them halfway up the board means that you're already gaining another 2 orders.
Yep.
Mhm.
When it comes to alpha LTs, it's about practice. The little bit of extra thought that you put into an Achilles run can end the game like round 1. Like if you visualize where the repeaters, where the hacking net is for Achilles, and you manage to avoid it, you manage to scalpel your way through, Achilles can end the game like easy.
Yeah. I think what Jordan was saying at the beginning is probably like the biggest thing for an alpha lieutenant is take those, take its lieutenant order and maybe 2 other orders, put them to a side and say, as soon as it doesn't matter how things are going, right, unless he's about to be in retreat by his first turn, those 3 orders are for getting him back safe, suppressor fire.
Yep.
I usually have good points.
Except when you talk about the Bokta.
No, especially when I talk about the Boktar.
Alright guys, missions can change your LT needs. So Decap and Cutthroat have reinforced tactical link. They tell your opponent who your lieutenant is, so it makes the value of a marker state lieutenant that much more.
And drastically lowers the value of lieutenant plus decoy options.
Makes it virtually worthless.
Useless.
Yeah. It's got to the point in Australia where people will take things like Lieutenant Oniwaban or Lieutenant Shinobu and just deploy them in the DZ just for that camo defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is definitely like when it's like this is where we're really trying to protect the lieutenant right now.
Yep. Firefight and Annihilation. You have to keep in mind that your lieutenant isn't just a objective of achieving loss of lieutenant, it's also an objective of the actual mission. So having that double fold, that's where you might be like, I'm just going to have 4 moderators and put them everywhere and fuck you. And finally, something we haven't really talked about a little bit is present a falsified front. So there are some units and some factions in the game that get hollow mast or hidden chain of command that can allow you to bait your opponent into investing into an LT kill to all of a sudden go, hey, I'm not in loss. Sorry you spent 12 orders killing my lieutenant. I'm now going to smash you.
Yeah. I didn't think the only one that comes to mind straight away is the Farzan. But
Yeah.
that's actually, that's some mind games. I like that one actually. Just like present a really obvious lieutenant, like, oh no, I fucked up my deployment. Oh dear.
Maybe maybe don't be unsportsmanlike in that regard, but yeah, I get your idea.
Yeah, like don't be that guy, please.
Oh no, I misdeployed my LT. Whatever
just
will
like,
I do?
Oops. Oops, I hope you don't kill my LT.
No. Hey, that's mind games for when you actually did fuck up and you're like trying to bait them into it and being like, oops. And then you're just sweating on the inside.
Ooh.
No. Oh god, no.
I know where you fucking live.
Jacob is going away for 6 months after this episode. You won't have to worry about this again.
I have never seen these three more horrified. Jordan and Tristan, but I looked down to Nick, and even Nick was like, "Fuck."
This is
Because Nick's a fucking parent.
This is a man's Infinity podcast.
Nick is like the most responsible adult I've ever met in my life. Of course he'd be horrified.
All right, let's move past
You can
this.
tell that man plays Bakunin.
Yes, for a long time.
True, yeah.
Oh, all right, Jacob, redeem yourself. Tell me how to kill my opponent's lieutenant.
By talking like that, and they'll kill themselves.
Yeah, so many.
And they'll surrender.
So many
Stop
ways.
talking,
Yeah.
I'll go, please.
Yeah. It's like it's here. Link Pictures and Guided has been tried and true since days of yore. It's obviously not quite as beefy as it used to be. As far as the actual guided rockets go, pitches.
It's easier to set up.
Yeah, easier to set up as far as the pitches go, easier to set up as far as Spotlight goes. The guided can be a little bit different, but most things fear a rocket launcher from out of line of sight, missile launcher. Most things, as the example we have here, still fear a missile launcher from out of line of sight. Another thing that's hasn't really changed, impersonators. Yeah, they're not quite as good as they used to be, but a Fidana Speculo in front of an obvious lieutenant will still ruin your day. So, I mean, some lieutenants might stand a chance, but surprise attack with martial arts is still fucking nasty.
Speculos are gross now.
Yeah. The one extra thing about these guys over, let's say, the over infiltrators is they can be put literally right next to your LT. If you take, I haven't seen it done. I don't know why. But
I have another story against Dante.
Right, but Haq Islam can still drop 3 impersonators.
Yes. Yes. HB.
Assassins.
Sorry, assassins.
Assassins.
I meant assassins.
Yep.
So it's unique. You'll only ever really see it as Haq Islam, assassins, or I suppose combined in Shazvasti.
Mm-hmm.
But if you see those factions, just be extra careful with your lieutenant. I'd almost even choose to reserve it if you know your opponent's going to go for them.
If you know you're going into an opponent who has impersonators, it's probably best just to reserve your lieutenant.
If you're going second into Assassins, Huck, or Shaz, or Vanilla combined, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, especially if it's a lieutenant kill mission.
Yep.
Like, even if you still, I think in Firefight or whatever, you still have them hidden, just over-defend them in that case.
What I would like to point out about impersonators is they do require 2 sets of past discovers to fully reveal. So at minimum, a Speculo can run 20 inches and then shoot and have 0 threat of you stopping them.
Yeah, and it also means that you can fearlessly walk behind a lieutenant, so if they don't dodge, you just get
I'm watching Nick do the math, and he looked around and then he nodded slightly, and I was like, okay, I got it
right. Drop troops, as we mentioned before, are still really effective at hunting down lieutenants. You can either use a drop troop skill, get right up close, spend the next order, lieutenant dead. It's a little bit riskier because you have to make the roll. But there's a lot of high fizz drop troops. There's there's a couple now explosive drop troops who can finish off a lieutenant in one go in an order off the table.
Yep.
Lu Jing and the
Taryot.
From Morats.
AVA 3, by the way.
Yeah, if you just put it,
and they're like 16 points. What are they, Nick?
It's so cheap.
16 points for the
bullshit.
And 18 points for the paramedic, which I've started running one of.
That's almost worth just dropping them.
It's bullshit. That's what it is.
Yes, they are 2 points. They start at 2 points more than a
regular Morat Vanguard with a fucking combi rifle.
Yep.
It's bullshit.
Yeah, and like, what's their fizz? Because they're more. It's a couple.
12?
12 and then 15 with Evo.
For the Evo.
Yeah, so
yeah.
you're looking at 15s on them. You're looking at, I think, 17s on the Lu Jing and Invincible Armies / Yu Jing.
Yeah.
Yeah, can just get rid of a lieutenant like that, and then you're set up to just do whatever else. I mean, health, half of the time you'd probably be like, okay, they're done. Move on, especially with the Morite drop troop. I just drop them and be like, oh, your lieutenant's dead? Cool, I'm done. You can kill him. Whatever. Bye.
It's how Hawkwood died in my game against Dante.
Yeah. As well as deployment, parachutist deployment zone. There's plenty of them. Raziat, whatever the Nomad's character is called.
Carlotta.
Equip Mirage.
Equip Mirage.
All of them can drop down relatively close to a lieutenant.
Except Dukash, he gets beaten by a Warcore.
Sure. Speculative fire. So
bad.
this is possible. Difficult in the fact that it's hard to make the roll. It's hard to necessarily get a range, and the weapons that could do this kind of few and far
I
between.
will say,
Not really.
from the transition from N4 to N5, the tractor mule weapons got the range buff. So they're now 8 to 24 instead of 8 to 16, and that affects their speculatively fire number as well. So I've had opponents in TAC spec fire me from like 4 inches.
You haven't had opponents in TAC, you've had Val.
No, it wasn't. It was Josh Price.
Yeah.
He spent, this was at CanCon, he spent a whole group's worth of orders with a tractor mule, or the good one, the courier, I think. And just was, I think they were spec firing on like 8s, and I'm like dodging on 8s. So he just got lucky a couple of times, and there was like 3 things dead. And I was like, what the fuck was that? I was on a rooftop. What do I do against this?
Yeah, that is one thing, is while the roll for speculative fire within like your 0 range bands is, or 3 range bands, is not great. It's generally like 8s, 7s, maybe 6s if you're... No 6s, but anyway. Generally, your opponent's not dodging on much more. So you just have to hit and hope they fail. I try to use it. I don't have much luck with it, but I know it's worth doing. But the speculative fire like a lizard who has a bunch of types of grenades and a decent BS is worth it if you've got nothing else you've got like no good opportunities.
Speculative fire for assassination is typically not your first or second plan.
Yeah, it's like a plan C.
Yeah, but it is a surprisingly good floor for assassination plans.
That's why it's at the end.
Yeah.
It is a thing that you can do.
Yeah. Dog Warriors are probably a good example as well of like they're close enough. I'm running out of orders to make this work. Toss grenades, see if this does it.
Yep.
Actually rolling 10s, don't they? Oh no, 13s.
In good range, 13s, yeah.
Yeah, because they're Fizz 16, good range, only -3.
They're Fizz 16 if they've taken a wound.
Yeah.
If they've been dogged.
If they've been dogged. Yeah.
He's got that dog in him.
They certainly do. It's the whole point of them.
All right. I have for us a little thought experiment that might add some credence to our examples.
Does it have a Boktar in it?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, good.
So we have a tournament coming up, Border Bash, as we mentioned. The most hated mission in that by me is Panic Room. So I'm sitting there going, how the hell do I play Panic Room as assassins? I think it's semi-difficult to actually even make a list for Panic Room as assassins.
You guys don't understand. Tristan hates Panic Room.
It's the worst mission in the ITS. That's just my opinion, guys.
The way I feel about B-Pong is the way he feels about Panic Room.
Yes.
It combines all the enjoyment of an armory mission and
with Biotech 4
and the restricted deployment of confused deployment from Biotech 4.
Has all the joy of dragging your balls across fucking broken glass for 3 turns.
I think I hate it as well because as a table maker, having to account for an 8-inch DZ and you're not deploying nearly anything outside your DZ just kills me on the inside.
The fact that it's one mission as well, and you're just sort of sitting there like, I almost wish they'd included biotech for as well.
Yes,
so you're at least
I do.
so you're at least having to account for it for 2 missions.
Yeah, it's very yes.
It is nice from the table construction perspective that day 2 is all the Armory missions and day 1 is none of the Armory missions. So you have that opportunity to reset between day 1 and day 2 and prep.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some re-racking that can go on.
You are pure psychopath if you're a tournament organizer and you're like, you know what? I want day 3 to have 1 army mission, and then day 1 to have 1 army mission. And
Day 3
to have
Yeah, I was about to say, like, you're an absolute psychopath if you have day 3 to begin with as a full stop.
I want day 2 to also have an army mission. And I want to have to, over lunch, change all the tables.
The truly psychopathic thing would be round 1, round 3, round 5. You have Armory, last launch, Panic Room.
Fuck off.
And you're like...
All right, Tristan, tell us about this fucking list.
All right, so we have 2 lists of very near identicality. So I'll go through it. We have Asawira AP Spitfire. We have the Asawira boarding shotgun with disco ballers. We have the NCO grenade launcher Ghulam. We have Layla Sharif. We have Ghulam. In this one is Lieutenant +1 command token. We have Barid Killer Hacker, Barid Regular Hacker. We have McMurrow. We have a Farzan Chain Command. We have a Faday. In Group 2, we have a Shujay Flaming Spear. We got the Missile Bot. We've got the Evo Bot because it gives us the extra order. And we got the Evo Bot because it refills the jammers of our 2 8-point mutts with smoke grenades and jammers. So, general idea of the list is a lot of people are going to go, it's Haqqislam, it's HB, it's Ghulam +1 command token, set and forget. A lot of people do that because they just go, it's the best LT in the game for the points, whatever. It's always good on paper.
So you have to over-infiltrate the Faday, right?
So the context of the list is Asawira are good close combat things in a link. They have disco ballers. They like to run in the panic room and control it, and they count for essential personnel. So does the NCO Ghulam. They have BTS 9 and 2 wounds, so if they can't get out, they can at least tank the biotech full zone. The chain of command, we'll talk about it a little bit. It's kind of like, is it necessary, is it not? That's kind of up for discussion. The idea of the list is if you want to go second, if you're forced to go first, you're kind of LT hunting with your own guided plan to try and break them down so that they get stuck in their DZ and the biotech full zone eats them. If you are going first, there is the option of trying to over-infiltrate that Faday to also assassinate the LT. You have lots of close combat and templates for the room. You have the NCO for the link.
You have to over-infiltrate it no matter what, right?
You can just deploy it in your DZ.
Sure, but then you're just playing the Faday.
If you go second and you play it, the idea is you play it because it's impossible to discover before it gets in the room.
Sure.
That's kind of the general idea. The jammers obviously stop them from getting into your DZ, and you put them near the room, and they stop them from getting in the room. The Shujay is just a Mim6 ARO threat with Mind Layer that kind of stops them from getting out of the DZ as well. And then you have lots of hacking, and Layla has that combat instinct hacking, which means that you can start popping those stealth units like the Hatamoto and stuff if they start running towards you. The only difference between these lists is I've turned the Ghulam Lieutenant into the Asawira Lieutenant, and I've changed that Ghulam into a Doctor. It might seem like a small change, but the Asawira potentially gets an extra order. Your Lieutenant, if it gets stuck in the panic room or the biotech force zone, is like very less likely to die. You get a Doctor, which is a whole other specialist that could potentially heal the Asawira if they do take a wound from the biotech full zone. That's kind of the general idea. So in this scenario, I don't think a lot of people would think about taking an Asawira LT. But that's kind of the logic, and that's kind of a situation where, I've always taken Ghulam LTs, but in this situation, maybe I should think about taking something else.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I think we can talk about, like, is this a situation where chain of command is worth it? That's what I'm kind of curious about, because I don't actually know. I don't actually have an opinion, really. I think in Panic Room, it's really bad to go into Loss of Lieutenant, but I don't know if it's bad enough that you want that Farzan.
Yeah, I think especially in High Islam, you're so layered up in defenses here as far as Asawira's regenerate, Farzan's got chain of command. I don't think it's wrong to go with the Asawira LT and just be like, I've got two layers of protection. If my opponent manages to get past that, either through luck or they're just really clever about it, they beat you. That's it.
I suppose the logic of the Farzan is the idea that my game plan turn 1 is to try and guided your dude. Your game plan might be to try and guided my dude back. And if you succeed on that, I still get a turn. And if you take the advantage early in Panic Room and kind of get that round 1 points score, it takes the pressure off a bit.
I think the other thing especially is if you drop the fact that if you go Asawira into the Panic Room, hey, by the way, this is my lieutenant, that lieutenant is potentially going to defend by being a distraction the rest of your army. So you'll lose one order and your Asawira lieutenant potentially, but 14 other orders are going to be untouched.
Also, it's Panic Room, so you have essential personnel. Yes, the Asawiras are both essential personnel. The Farzan chain of command is not just backup for your lieutenant dying, it's backup essential personnel.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yep. For anyone asking why there's only 5 in Group 2, I put the 10 really important models in Group 1 just in case you want to start coordinate ordering all of them. And the Evobot gives you that extra order. So there is actually enough orders that if they dock Group 2, because they don't want you to guide them, there's still the potential of 3 orders in that group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jordan? You look very tired. You look like you don't want to talk about assassins.
I always look like this, unfortunately. I can't fix my own face. There have been notes made about me at work that I don't look happy enough.
Every time I hear that, I'm like, go fuck yourself. And of course I'm not happy. I'm at work.
No, it's interesting. I think Panic Room is just a cunt of a mission is the problem. I know Luke Henry as well has been just sort of lamenting Panic Room as a mission for the lineup.
Luke messaged me and went, I think I'm just going to play Vanilla Hark because I can't be asked trying to make assassins work for Panic Room.
I think if you're not locked into over-infiltrating the Fidei, I would potentially ask the question, is it not just better being something else? Because you are wasting a whole bunch of skills. That's the only thing that stands out to me. Because if you aren't... Because the Fidei is like a perfect piece to just sort of like, you roll the dice on it. It's what? It's over-infiltrating on
I think it's a 7.
9.
14.
9? Is it neg 6 or neg 3?
It has to use its fizz, and it's neg 3.
Okay.
Wait, the Fidei has to use its fizz?
Because of confused deployment.
Yeah,
confused deployment says you have to use your fizz, and it's at a neg 3.
So yeah, I would be looking, if you aren't committed to doing that, I'd be looking to replace it with something else.
Even if you're going second, would you be committed to over infiltrating it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because then you're making your opponent think about it.
I guess the only thing you're losing is the impersonation state, which you can.
That's what I'm saying. Is if you're not committed to doing that, I would just look to replace it. Like, because your thing is, it sort of gets into the room without being discovered. Like, I'd almost just rather have another Shujay then, or something like that.
That's fair.
It also provides a guided missile defense if he goes second. Because you put an impersonation marker next to your lieutenant and it can't be guided.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, fucking Nick with the clever strats there, eh? That's fucking brilliant.
That's a good call out. I don't know. That's the only thing that stands out to me. I think Yeah, look. I don't think like for other factions. I definitely don't think the chain of command is a necessity. Just because you can usually fit, 2 to 3 war horses in a list potentially, and that is sort of the break point for me where loss of lieutenant becomes a whole lot less scary. As soon as I can do a half decent imitation of a full group of orders, is when you start being a lot more comfortable with loss of lieutenant. But I think that you've made a pretty good case for the Farzan here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just taking a look at anything that's equivalent to 23 points, and there's some good alternate orders.
There are ways you could squeeze out a second Shujai. You could squeeze out a Nadir. There's stuff you could do.
Even the Muyib heavy rocket launchers, 22 points, attack awareness, X visor.
Yeah.
Not super helpful in panic.
Again, it's not a case of like it's just what stands out to me looking at the list is that the Fidei isn't getting the value that I think I would want out of a piece like that.
Sure.
Real
no, it's going to play
in the panic
differently
room,
because it's panic room. But then also have to ask, what other missions is this covering? Because it might be worth playing the Fidei slightly suboptimally in Panic Room to have it in the list for another mission.
That's true. In that tournament context, it's true. In just the context of Panic Room, Jordan could be right. I do like the idea that you could protect your LT from guided with the impersonation marker. That's really cool.
Totally.
But I think the general idea of making the Asawira your LT, you're losing that +1 command token. But in this context, it is a more aggressive LT. There is more risk in terms of using it as a piece, but it's probably worth it in the context and scenario of Panic Room.
Yeah, Panic Room also has joint command, so you're already at 5 command tokens. The Gulam is providing your 6th command token.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which I think is potentially a case against the Farzan as well, just because 6 command tokens means you have a really nice buffer zone of being able to convert orders and make that turn of loss a whole lot less scary.
Yep.
Yeah,
potentially.
And actually, going through this, both Asawiras are essential personnel. The NCO is essential personnel, and Leia as a character.
Layla and Migmara are both essential personnel as well.
Forgot McMurra. Yeah. Okay, so you've already got 5 before the Farzan, and that's probably sufficient.
Yeah, potentially. The Shujai might actually be one as well. I'm not sure. But yeah, there's definitely enough essential personnel.
Yep, definitely. Cool list.
Interesting. All right. Well, I have some things to think about. I swapped the Farzan for a second Fidei. Hey!
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't going to mention that one, but I was like, yeah. Honestly, that might not be that could be an interesting thing, because 2 9s, odds are in your favor. You'll land one of them.
Nick, we just went through it. It was 4 9s v 1 9. I missed 8 dice.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're not rolling 4 9s. You're rolling 2 9s.
Yeah, I guess.
And that's much closer to my 1 9, which worked.
That's true.
I do think that there is one thing, is that those bunch of Fideis would be a fucking nightmare actually in the Panic Room.
I think so too. The only problem is
4 discovers to get both of them out of things and then kill
the problem
them.
is the second discover is a discover shoot. But if they fail the first discover, it's just a big pain in the ass for them.
Yeah.
All right, well, I enjoyed that.
I did too.
Final thoughts.
Lieutenants suck.
You get acclimatized to it, I think.
Yeah,
I've never really thought about how much having to have an LT sucks, but it kind of does suck.
It does. Objectively, right? It is a weakness in your list that you can do nothing about except mitigate.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on how you build, because the more obvious you make a lieutenant, the more use you can get out of that lieutenant order.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at some point, now you're reliably running a 16 or 17 order list.
Yep.
And admittedly, coming through all the versions of Infinity, I feel like LT assassinations have become less common. And they're still there, but I remember just back in the day, you'd just be like, oh, that's your LT. I'm gonna fucking kill him. That's the first thing I'll do.
Yeah.
I think now there's so many ways of protecting your LT, and there's so many good like AROs way to protect your lieutenant that it has become less. It's just a non-issue. You're like, oh, if you figure out your lieutenant and happen to be there, sure, but otherwise, I don't really care. Like, no one. I don't. There are very few armies. There are very few lists that benefit from having the plan of I will kill my opponent's LT 100%.
Yeah,
because it's just an auto sync.
Yeah, most of the time you're better off putting the orders into doing the mission.
Yeah.
So I think my final thoughts is don't fear the LT. They'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really go in expecting the worst. And there's almost a dichotomy in that the bottom end there's set and forget decoy and LT, or LT and decoy, and then there's Caronted who gives 0 fucks and spends 12 orders on himself and goes, oh, I fucking dump around and fucking stepsister you and stepsister you and fucking hack you and shoot you. Oh, I died. Oh, this Unidron's now whip 16. And you're like, the fuck is this bullshit?
Just don't take bad chain of commands is the best advice I think I can give. Don't feel like you need to take a chain of command. Don't feel like you're obligated to take a chain of command. Don't overinvest in a skill which is betting against yourself. Because that's what chain of command is, essentially, is you're betting against your own ability to protect your lieutenant.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So don't overinvest in that skill. Just try and develop better instincts playing with your lieutenant.
That is actually a really good point in the sense that chain of command making you think less, making you practice less of actually like placing your LT in a good spot and defending it properly. So it's actually stunting your growth in terms of, you know, your deployment skills and things like that.
I'm a smart guy, what can I say?
Yeah, you just take LTs that, you know, I don't give a fuck if this dies. All right, guys.
Behold, it's a cutter. Jordan, this is the 7th show and tell in a row you've brought the cutter.
Does the cutter ever lose? Apparently not.
Sometimes.
Wait, does that mean the 4 times beforehand where you brought nothing to show and tell, you were actually just bringing the cutter?
Yep.
Okay.
And then before that, it was a Raicho.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how manly are the people who have their lieutenant cutter in ARO going second and just go, I'll reveal it sometime and I won't be in loss?
Look, I've definitely seen it. I've also seen just like revealing it I've also seen it just in camo marker state on ARO duty. Like there are some armies that just really struggle to deal with a piece like that.
I think there's a lot of armies that really struggle with it.
Yeah.
Like watching TAC, you just like got a cutter on ARO duty. It's like, all right, fucking.
Yep.
What do you got?
Yeah, you got a front of it. Oh, it exploded. Nice.
It is dead now.
All right, guys. That's been LTs. If you have made it to the end of the episode and there is a topic that you would like us to talk about, please hit us in the YouTube comments. Hit us up with any feedback you'd like in the comments, in Discord. Send us an email at lostoflieutenant@gmail.com if you really want to.
Yep.
Next episode, I think we're going to be talking about tournament prep. Specifically, we're going to be using our event Border Bash as our prime example. I think quite a few of us are going to Border Bash.
I think all of us are going to Border Bash.
Are you going, Jacob?
I'm not quite decided yet. I might have something on.
Jacob is going to Border Bash.
Okay. Jacob's writing a list for Border Bash.
Jacob is going to Border
Really
Bash.
am.
He will be at Border Bash.
Yeah. So I guess on top of just tournament prep, this will be looking at a tournament with 2 objective rooms. Which
Tristan, I'm going to need you to send me Jacob's address so I can ensure that he is going to Border Bash.
I'm going to
Okay.
get kidnapped, apparently.
Yeah, we can do that. We can sort that out. All right. I've been Tristan.
I'd actually fucking love that. Just to be kidnapped and forced to play Infinity.
Hey, Jacob, does this rag smell like chloroform?
Fuck's sake. All right. Come on, guys. I've been Tristan.
I've been Nick.
I've been Jacob.
And I've been Jordan.
Good
We'll
night,
see you guys
everyone.
next time.
Have a good night.